Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the slow drift of dust particles in the afternoon light as I worked. My fingertips traced the ornate wooden frame that had hung in our family home for generations. The portrait inside, my great-grandmother Alina in her high-neck dress, hair pulled severely back, had watched over us all with her unsmiling gaze. The glass needed cleaning, and as I passed my cloth over its surface, that's when I noticed it, a single fingerprint pressed against the inside of the glass. Not outside, inside. The house was quiet that day, the kind of quiet that feels like it's listening to you. I remember the gentle creak of the floorboards beneath my feet as I carried the frame to the dining room table. The soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway marked the seconds as I studied that fingerprint. No one had opened this frame in decades, or so my mother had always told me. It was considered something of a family heirloom, not to be tampered with. But that fingerprint shouldn't have been there. I felt a slight chill as I turned the frame over. The backing was sealed with small, aged nails that had rusted slightly at their tips. 4 of them held the cardboard backing in place, their heads flattened from being hammered in long ago. I found a thin letter opener in my father's old desk and carefully worked each nail loose. They made a soft, scraping sound against the wood as they came free. When I lifted the cardboard backing, the scent of old paper and forgotten time drifted up to meet me. The original photograph of Alina was there, its edges slightly yellowed, but behind it was something else. Another photograph, smaller and more recent than the portrait. I carefully extracted it, my fingertips barely touching its edges. It was a Polaroid, the kind that developed instantly, popular in the late 70s and 80s. The image showed a darkened doorway, my bedroom doorway, I realized with a slow spreading coldness. And standing in that doorway was a silhouette, just the outline of a person watching someone sleep. I set the photograph down on the table, aware of the house's silence pressing in around me. The clock continued its steady rhythm in the hallway, tick, tick, tick. I'd lived in this house for 5 years, since inheriting it after my mother passed. Before that, she'd lived here alone for nearly 20 years after my father died. The silhouette in the doorway was tall and broad-shouldered, a man. The photograph had been taken from my bed, I realized, from the perspective of someone lying there, looking toward the door. I picked up my phone and dialed Detective Morgan. We'd become acquainted 3 months ago when I discovered some odd discrepancies in my mother's financial records after her death. Nothing had come of that investigation, but she'd given me her card. "If you find anything else unusual," she'd said, her eyes steady on mine, "anything at all, call me." The detective arrived within the hour. I heard the careful, measured sound of her footsteps on the porch before the doorbell rang. Detective Morgan always wore practical shoes with thick soles, but she moved with surprising quietness for someone of her solid build. "Ms. Pearson," she nodded as I opened the door. Her gray eyes took in my face, reading my expression with the practiced ease of someone who spends their life studying people's reactions. "You found something." It wasn't a question. I led her to the dining room where the portrait lay disassembled. The Polaroid sat alone on the polished wood surface. "It was behind my great-grandmother's portrait," I explained, watching as she pulled latex gloves from her pocket and carefully picked up the photograph. "There's a fingerprint on the inside of the glass, too." Detective Morgan examined the Polaroid without speaking for a long moment. The house seemed to hold its breath around us. "This is your bedroom door?" she finally asked, her voice deliberately neutral. "Yes, the angle it would have been taken from my bed." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm spring day outside. But I didn't take it, and as far as I know, no one else has lived in this house except my mother since my father died. That was in 1994. The detective set the photograph down and examined the frame, paying special attention to the fingerprint on the inside of the glass. "We'll need to take these for processing," she said. "The print might give us something, though after all this time." She let the sentence trail off. We both knew what that meant. Time erases evidence, blurs certainties. "Your mother never mentioned anything unusual, never expressed any concerns about someone being in the house?" Detective Morgan asked, her eyes still on the frame. "No, never." I paused, remembering something. "But there was a period, maybe 6 months or so, when I was around 12, when she installed new locks on all the doors and windows. She said it was just a precaution after a break-in down the street, but I don't actually remember hearing about any break-in." Detective Morgan nodded slightly, filing this information away. "And how old would you have been when this photograph was likely taken, judging by the style and condition?" "If it was taken in my bedroom in this house, I would have been between 8 and 17. That's when I lived here as a child before college." A slight furrow appeared between the detective's brows. "And you never noticed anything unusual during that time? No sense of being watched, no items moved or disturbed?" I started to shake my head, then stopped. A memory surfaced, something I hadn't thought about in years. "There was one thing," I said slowly. "Sometimes I would wake up at night with the feeling that someone had just been there, and occasionally I'd find my bedroom door open in the morning when I was sure I'd closed it the night before." I swallowed hard. My mother said it was just the old house settling, causing the latch to slip. The detective's expression didn't change, but I sensed a new alertness in her posture. "Ms. Pearson, I think we need to look deeper into your mother's records, and perhaps into some unsolved cases from that time period." She carefully placed the photograph and frame into evidence bags. "There's something else you should know. 3 months ago, when you asked me to look into those financial discrepancies." I nodded, feeling a strange heaviness settling in my chest. "I found something I didn't tell you then because it seemed unrelated and unnecessarily distressing." She met my eyes directly. "For nearly 15 years, your mother made monthly payments to a post office box in a town about 40 miles from here. The payment stopped abruptly in 2001. The grandfather clock struck 4, its chimes echoing through the silent house. Each note seemed to hang in the air longer than it should." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though a part of me already knew. "I'm not suggesting anything yet," Detective Morgan replied carefully. "But someone was in your bedroom taking photographs of you sleeping. Someone your mother might have been paying to stay away, and when the payments stopped, she changed all the locks," I finished for her. Over the next few weeks, the investigation revealed fragments of a story I had never suspected. The fingerprint on the glass matched a man named Robert Caldwell, who had worked briefly as a handyman in our neighborhood during the late 80s. He had a record, nothing violent, just petty theft and trespassing, but he had disappeared from the area around the same time my mother began making those mysterious payments. What we couldn't determine was how the photograph had ended up behind my great-grandmother's portrait, or why. Had my mother found it and hidden it there? Had Caldwell himself placed it there as some kind of message or threat? The detective pursued leads, tracking down old neighbors and acquaintances. Each conversation uncovered new questions rather than answers. Caldwell had apparently returned to the area briefly in 2001, according to a former employer who'd given him a few days' work. That was when the payments stopped. That was when the locks changed. And now, sitting in my mother's house, my house, I find myself studying the walls, the doorways, the spaces behind furniture. What else might be hidden here? What other secrets did my mother keep? Detective Morgan believes Caldwell is likely dead now. Records show someone by that name passed away in a hospice 3 states away in 2015. But she can't be certain it's the same man. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between sleep and waking, I imagine I hear footsteps in the hallway, pausing just outside my bedroom door. The sound of someone watching, waiting. The portrait of my great-grandmother Alina now hangs in the attic, her stern face turned toward the wall. I couldn't bear to have it watching me anymore. But I often think about that single fingerprint pressed against the inside of the glass, as if someone had reached through from another time, leaving their mark where it should have been impossible to leave one. And I wonder what other impossible things might be true. Story 2. The motel room had been untouched for months, locked, uncleaned, forgotten. But when the new owner opened it, he found a suitcase, clothes laid out, and the bed freshly made. On the desk sat a journal with only one sentence written over and over: I never left. I remember the first time I stepped into room 217 of the Pinewood Motel. The air hung heavy with stillness, as if the room itself was holding its breath. It was early October, and the late afternoon sunlight filtered through dusty curtains, casting long shadows across the faded carpet. Outside, the mountains loomed silent against a darkening sky, indifferent to the mystery I was about to unravel. The case came to me 3 days after Marcus Elliott purchased the foreclosed property. A small-town motel with 19 rooms stretched in a single row along Highway 16, forgotten by travelers who preferred the chain hotels closer to the interstate. Marcus had bought it at auction, sight unseen, with plans to renovate and rebrand, but room 217 had stopped him in his tracks. I don't understand it, he told me, his voice barely above a whisper as we stood in the doorway. Every other room was stripped or vandalized. This one, it's like someone's still living here. I surveyed the room again, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light. A suitcase sat open on the luggage rack, neatly packed with folded clothes. The bed was made with hospital corners, the navy blue comforter smooth and unwrinkled. A pair of men's loafers waited by the bathroom door. On the desk, a leather-bound journal lay open, its pages filled with the same 9 characters, written over and over in increasingly frantic script: I never left. But according to the motel records, no one had checked into room 217 in over 8 months. I pulled on latex gloves with a soft snap and moved toward the suitcase. The clothing inside belonged to a man, size medium shirts, 32-inch waist trousers, all in subdued colors. No tags, no names, just ordinary clothes for an ordinary man. In the side pocket, I found a folded receipt from a gas station dated April 15th of last year, and nothing else. Have you touched anything? I asked Marcus, who remained frozen in the doorway. No, just the door. As soon as I saw this, I called you. I nodded, appreciating his caution. The room felt preserved, like an exhibit behind glass. Even the dust seemed to have settled deliberately, coating every surface except for the writing desk and the neatly made bed, as if someone had been using them. The previous owner, what happened to him? I asked, running my fingertip along the edge of the desk, collecting no dust. Walter Craw's heart attack about 10 months ago. His kids inherited the place but couldn't keep it afloat. That's how it ended up at auction. I flipped open the leather journal, careful not to disturb the pen that lay in the crease. The handwriting started out neat and controlled on the first few pages, gradually becoming more erratic, the pressure of the pen leaving deep impressions in the paper. By the final page, the words "I never left" were carved into the paper, nearly tearing through. The bathroom door was closed. I approached it slowly, listening for any sound from within. Silence. When I turned the handle, it moved smoothly as if recently oiled. Inside, a single towel hung perfectly centered on the rack. The shower curtain was drawn back, the tub empty and clean. No toiletries, no personal items, just a bar of wrapped motel soap on the edge of the sink, untouched. I returned to the main room and checked the nightstand drawer. Inside lay a Gideon Bible and a local phone directory from 2 years ago. Nothing unusual, except for a small water stain on the Bible's cover that resembled a handprint. "Did Walter keep detailed records of his guests?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. The filing cabinet in the office just had tax forms and invoices, no guest registry that I could find. I moved to the window and peered through the gap in the curtains. Room 217 overlooked the back of the property, where an unused swimming pool collected dead leaves and rainwater. Beyond that, dense pine forest stretched toward the mountains, the perfect place to disappear. "I need to see the security footage," I said, turning back to Marcus. "There isn't any." Walter was old school. No cameras, no electronic locks, just keys and paper receipts. Of course, that would have been too easy. I spent the next 3 hours documenting everything in the room, photographing each item, recording each measurement. The clothes in the suitcase would fit a man approximately 5'10", 170 pounds. The shoes were size 9, well worn but polished. Whoever had stayed here or was staying here valued order and cleanliness. As twilight descended, shadows deepened across the room. I switched on the bedside lamp and the bulb flickered momentarily before casting a warm glow. The room took on a different character in the artificial light, more intimate, more unsettling. I called the local police department and spoke with Sheriff Harmon, an old colleague from my days at the academy. He agreed to run the room through their missing persons database, but didn't sound hopeful. "A lot of people pass through these parts wanting to stay anonymous," he said, "especially at old motels like that one." While waiting for Harmon's call back, I decided to search the space beneath the bed. Kneeling down, I lifted the dust ruffle and shone my flashlight into the darkness. A single object caught the beam, a small voice recorder, the kind journalists use for interviews. I retrieved it carefully and examined it in the lamplight. The battery indicator showed it was still charged. With a deep breath, I pressed play. Static crackled, followed by a man's voice, clear and measured. "Day 1 at Pinewood, rooms decent enough, quiet, I can work here." I fast-forwarded through several mundane entries, observations about the weather, notes about the motel staff, complaints about the weak water pressure. Then, on what was labeled as Day 11, the tone changed. "Something's wrong with this place. The walls, they seem closer today. And I keep hearing footsteps outside my door, but when I look, there's never anyone there." Each subsequent recording grew more paranoid. The man described feeling watched, hearing whispers from the air vent, seeing shadows move against the laws of light. By day 17, his voice had become a hoarse whisper. I tried to check out today. I packed my bags, put on my coat, walked to the office. But when I opened my eyes, I was back in this room, standing in front of the mirror I never left. The final recording was nothing but breathing, slow, deliberate breaths punctuated by the scratch of pen on paper. Sheriff Harmon called back as I was listening to the recordings for the second time. "Got nothing in our system matching your description," he said, "but I talked to Maggie down at the diner. She remembers a writer staying at Pinewood last spring. Kept to himself, always ordered the same thing, black coffee and blueberry pancakes. Name was Kenneth or Kevin, something with a K, said he was working on a book about local hauntings." A writer researching hauntings. The irony wasn't lost on me. As night fell completely, Marcus grew increasingly uncomfortable with the room. He waited in the parking lot while I finished my examination. Before leaving, I placed a small, discreet camera on the bookshelf, aimed at the desk and bed. If someone was still using this room, I would have evidence. 3 days passed before my camera detected movement. The footage showed the room in darkness, the red digits of the alarm clock reading 3:17 a.m. Then slowly the desk chair pulled back as if someone were sitting down. The journal opened, pages turning on their own. The pen rose into the air, hovering momentarily before beginning to write, guided by invisible hands. I returned to room 217 the following morning. The journal had 3 new pages filled with the same sentence: "I never left." The pen had been replaced exactly where I had found it initially. Over the next 2 weeks, I dug deeper into the motel's history. Walter Cross had purchased it 30 years ago, renovating it room by room. According to his daughter, whom I tracked down in Seattle, room 217 had always been Walter's favorite. Dad used to joke that it was his lucky room, she told me over the phone. He'd stay there sometimes when he and Mom fought, said he did his best thinking there. When I asked if her father had been a writer, she laughed. Dad, no, he couldn't spell to save his life, but he kept journals. Mom said he wrote in them every night before bed. I requested access to Walter's personal effects, most of which had been placed in storage by his children. Among cardboard boxes of fishing tackle and old photographs, I found 12 leather-bound journals identical to the one in room 217. The first 11 contained normal entries, business notes, family observations, complaints about his arthritis. The 12th journal, however, contained only one sentence, repeated on every page: "I never left." The handwriting matched the journal in the motel room perfectly. I confronted the truth as I stood once more in room 217, watching the sunset paint the walls amber. Walter Cross had never transferred the deed of room 217 to the new owners. In his mind, in whatever realm he now existed, he had never left his favorite room, and somehow neither had anyone else who had stayed there since. The motel was demolished 3 months later. Marcus couldn't find buyers for the property after word got out about room 217. The land remains vacant, though locals say they sometimes see lights in the exact spot where the room once stood, a soft glow that appears at dusk and fades with the rising sun. I drive past occasionally on my way to other cases. I never stop, but sometimes in my rearview mirror I glimpse a figure standing by the roadside, a man of medium build, watching me pass with hollow eyes, his mouth forming those 3 words: "I never left, and neither, I fear, has a piece of me." Story 3, it landed in her inbox with no subject line and no sender name. The message was brief: the walls remember everything. Attached was a photo of her living room, taken from above, where no camera had ever been placed. I remember the exact moment Elaine Sheffield showed me her laptop screen, her finger tapping nervously against the touchpad as she zoomed in on the image. The warm glow of her desk lamp cast long shadows across her face, revealing the fine lines of worry that hadn't been there when I'd last seen her, perhaps 3 years ago. Outside her window, autumn leaves drifted down in the fading afternoon light, occasionally tapping against the glass like gentle reminders of time passing. "I received this yesterday," she whispered, her voice steady but thin like a thread about to snap. "I've checked the metadata. The photograph was taken 2 days ago at 3:17 p.m. I was at work." I leaned closer, studying the image. The perspective was indeed unusual, as if someone had mounted a camera on the ceiling. The living room looked ordinary enough: a modest gray sofa, a coffee table with a half-empty mug, a bookshelf lined with paperbacks organized by color. Nothing seemed disturbed or out of place, but the angle was impossible. There was no vent, no light fixture, no logical place where a camera could have been hidden. "Have you contacted the police?" I asked, my notebook open, pen poised above the crisp white page. Elaine's laugh was soft, almost apologetic. "And tell them what?" "That I received an email from an address that doesn't exist, with a cryptic message and a photo that couldn't have been taken. They'd think I was setting up an elaborate hoax." She wasn't wrong. As a private investigator specializing in digital harassment cases, I'd seen how often these incidents fell through the cracks of law enforcement. Too strange, too ambiguous, not quite criminal enough to warrant resources in an overextended system. The email address itself was peculiar, just a string of numbers followed by a null void, not a valid domain. When I attempted to reply to it, the message bounced back immediately. The IP address traced to nowhere, or rather everywhere, bouncing through servers across 3 continents before disappearing into the digital ether. "Has anyone else been in your apartment recently? Maintenance workers, friends?" My pen glided across the paper, recording her answers methodically. "No one." Elaine's fingers curled around her coffee mug, seeking warmth. "I've lived alone since David left, 2 years now." David Sheffield, the name settled in the air between us. I had met him once or twice during social gatherings when Elaine and I had worked together at the university archives. A quiet man with watchful eyes and a habit of standing too close when he spoke. Their divorce had been finalized shortly before I moved across the country to start my new career. "Tell me about the message itself," I prompted, turning to a fresh page in my notebook. "The walls remember everything." Does that phrase hold any significance for you? A subtle change came over Elaine's face, a slight tightening around her eyes, a momentary hesitation before she spoke. It's something David used to say. When we argued, he'd say that even when I thought I was alone, the walls were listening, remembering. The chill that ran through me had nothing to do with the autumn breeze slipping through the cracked window. I glanced around her apartment, neat, orderly, with no visible signs of surveillance equipment. But in the digital age, listening devices could be smaller than a button, cameras no larger than a pinhead. Over the next 3 days, I conducted a methodical sweep of Elaine's apartment. I found nothing unusual in the traditional sense: no hidden microphones, no concealed cameras. The ceiling of her living room was smooth plaster with a simple light fixture that I dismantled and examined piece by piece. Nothing. But on the 4th day, while Elaine was at work, I noticed something peculiar about the bookshelf. Unlike the rest of her meticulously organized apartment, one shelf seemed slightly off-kilter. The books there weren't arranged by color like the others. They formed their own pattern, titles that, when read in sequence, made no logical sense together. Hidden Passages, Digital Frontiers, The Watching Eye, Memory's Wall, Beyond Sight. I carefully removed each book, checking behind and beneath them. When I pulled out Memory's wall, a thin device clattered to the hardwood floor. No larger than a credit card and barely thicker than a sheet of paper, its matte black surface absorbed the light. No brand name, no serial number, just a small lens and what appeared to be a wireless transmitter. That evening, I waited for Elaine in her kitchen, the device sealed in an evidence bag beside me. The sky outside had darkened to a deep indigo, streetlights flickering to life one by one. When her key turned in the lock, I didn't move, allowing her to find me sitting there in the half-light. "You found something," she said, not a question. I nodded, sliding the evidence bag across the table. "This was behind one of your books. It's a camera, but unlike any commercial model I've seen. Military-grade, possibly prototype technology. It can transmit wirelessly to a receiver within about a half-mile radius." Elaine didn't touch the bag. She simply stared at it, her face a careful mask. "David," she whispered, the name falling from her lips like a stone into still water. "That would be my guess," I agreed, "but there's more." I opened my laptop, showing her what I discovered after hours of digital forensics. The email hadn't come from nowhere. It had been bounced through a complex series of proxies, but ultimately originated from an IP address registered to Meridian Technologies, a defense contractor specializing in surveillance equipment. "David works there," Elaine confirmed, her voice hollow. "He's in product development." The pieces were falling into place, but something still didn't fit. The camera explained how the photo was taken, but not why. Not why now, 2 years after their divorce. Not why the cryptic message, the deliberate attempt to unsettle her. "Elaine," I said softly, watching her face carefully. What did the walls remember? The silence that followed stretched thin, punctuated only by the distant sound of traffic and the gentle hum of the refrigerator. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low I had to lean forward to hear her. "Before we separated, I found files on his computer, designs for surveillance equipment that could be used for domestic spying. I copied them, sent them anonymously to a journalist. Her fingers traced invisible patterns on the tabletop. The story never ran. The journalist was found dead 3 weeks later, apparent suicide." My skin prickled. "Did David know what you'd done?" "I thought he didn't. I was so careful." Her eyes met mine. Fear and defiance mingled in their depths. "But the walls remember everything, don't they?" 2 days later, I accompanied Elaine to Meridian Technologies' glass and steel headquarters. Not to confront David, that would have been dangerous, but to speak with the company's chief security officer, an old colleague of mine who owed me a favor. The meeting was brief, off the record. The device was turned over. Questions were asked in careful, measured tones about employee ethics and the misappropriation of company technology. No charges were filed, no reports were submitted. But 3 weeks later, David Sheffield was no longer employed at Meridian Technologies. The emails stopped. The feeling of being watched gradually faded from Elaine's life, though I noticed she rearranged her apartment completely, moving the furniture, replacing the bookshelves with open cabinets, installing smart home security that she could monitor from her phone. Sometimes when I visit her for coffee, I catch her glancing up at the corners of rooms, her eyes scanning for the glint of a lens, the shadow of a device. The walls may remember everything, but so do we, so do we. And in my line of work, I've learned that some memories are best left undisturbed, some secrets better left in the shadows. Because sometimes, when you stare too long into the darkness, you might discover that something is staring back. Story 4, she was checking for mold under the house when her flashlight hit wood. She moved closer and saw it clearly, a fully assembled crib, pristine, with a mobile still spinning. Inside the crib sat a folded note that read, "This time, don't forget." I've spent 23 years as a detective in this small coastal town, where the fog rolls in every evening like clockwork and secrets settle into the damp earth. The Harmon case wasn't supposed to be mine. I was 3 weeks from retirement, filling out pension paperwork when the call came in. Sarah Harmon, 34, found something unusual in the crawl space of her newly purchased Victorian on Maple Street. The house had been empty for nearly 7 years before the Harmons moved in, a young couple from the city looking for that small-town charm everyone seems to idealize these days. The previous owners, the Caldwells, had left rather suddenly. Most folks around here said it was financial trouble, but rumors have a way of shifting like sand underfoot. I remember the afternoon I first visited the Harmon residence. The air was heavy with approaching rain, the kind that makes your bones ache with anticipation. Sarah Harmon met me at the door, her face pale against her dark hair. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "It's still there," she whispered, leading me through the house. I didn't touch anything. The entrance to the crawl space was through a small door in the utility room, barely large enough for an adult to slip through. I've never been fond of confined spaces, but some things in this job you just have to push through. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness as I crawled forward on elbows and knees, the smell of damp earth and old wood filling my nostrils. And then I saw it just as Sarah had described, a crib not old or weathered but new, white painted wood gleaming in the artificial light. The mobile above it was delicate little fabric stars and moons suspended on thin threads, moving slightly in the draft from the open door. Not spinning rapidly as one might expect from recent disturbance, but gently rotating as if someone had set it in motion hours ago and it was now winding down. Inside the crib was a folded piece of paper, crisp and white against the pale pink mattress. I carefully retrieved it with a gloved hand. The note was written in neat, deliberate script. "This time, don't forget." 4 words, simple words that sent a chill through me despite the warmth of the summer day. The Harmons had no children. Sarah was not pregnant. They had no explanation for the crib, and according to them, no one had been in the crawl space since their home inspection 6 months prior. The inspector's report made no mention of anything unusual beneath the house. I spent that evening in the archives of our small police department, dust motes dancing in the beam of the desk lamp as I searched for anything related to the previous owners. The Caldwells had been a quiet couple, James and Alina. They'd lived in the house for 11 years before their abrupt departure. I found nothing unusual in their records, no complaints, no disturbances. But something about the name tugged at my memory, a loose thread I couldn't quite grasp. It wasn't until I was driving home, the streetlights casting pools of yellow on the wet asphalt, that it came to me. I turned the car around and headed back to the station, pulling the archived newspapers from 8 years ago. There it was, a small article buried on page 4. Alina Caldwell had been hospitalized briefly. Nothing specific, just a mention that she was recovering at home after a medical emergency. The timing aligned with rumors I'd heard years ago about a woman on Maple Street who had lost a baby. The next morning, I visited Alina's sister, Margaret Wilson, who still lived in town. Her house smelled of coffee and cinnamon, a warmth that contrasted with the hesitation in her eyes when I mentioned Alina. It was hard for them, Margaret said, turning her coffee cup slowly between her palms. Ellie had 2 miscarriages before the stillbirth. The doctors told her not to try again, but she wanted a child so badly. "And then they just left town?" I asked. Margaret's eyes darted to a photograph on her mantle, Elena and James on their wedding day. James said it was for a fresh start, new town, new memories, but Ellie, she wasn't right after the stillbirth. She kept insisting they were forgetting something, that they needed to go back for someone. I asked Margaret if Elena had ever assembled a crib in the crawl space. She looked genuinely confused. Why would anyone put a crib under the house? Indeed, why would anyone? The lab analysis of the note revealed nothing unusual. Standard printer paper, ink from a common ballpoint pen. No fingerprints except for mine and Sarah Harmon's, which made sense given we'd both handled it. The crib itself was new, a model available at any number of chain stores. The purchase couldn't be traced. I interviewed neighbors, former friends of the Caldwells. No one remembered anything about a baby or a crib in the crawl space. Several mentioned Elena's declining mental health in the months before they moved away, how she would sometimes walk the streets at night, peering into windows as if looking for something or someone. 2 weeks into the investigation, Sarah Harmon called me at 3 a.m. Her voice trembled on the phone. "The mobile," she whispered, "it's spinning again." I drove through the empty streets, the world quiet except for the occasional cry of a night bird. Sarah met me at the door in a bathrobe, her husband standing behind her with a baseball bat in hand. They'd heard noises from beneath the house, she said, soft scraping sounds like someone moving furniture. Together we approached the crawlspace door. I went in first, the beam of my flashlight stronger than before. The crib was still there, unchanged, except for the mobile. It spun steadily, too rhythmically to be caused by a draft. And this time there was something else. A small stuffed lamb, worn and faded, sat propped against the pillow. It hadn't been there during my first visit. I retrieved the toy carefully. It was old, well-loved, the kind of comfort object a child carries everywhere. Stitched into one foot in faded blue thread was a name, Emma. The Caldwells had never mentioned an Emma. Their stillborn daughter, according to county records, had been named Lily. I spent the next day tracking down James Caldwell. They had moved to a city about 3 hours north. When I called, a woman answered, not Elena, but James's new wife. She told me James was away on business, but took my number with a promise he would call. He never did. Instead, that evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of amber and purple, Elena Caldwell herself appeared at my gate. She looked older than her 45 years, gray streaking her once blonde hair, lines etched deeply around her eyes. "You've been asking about us," she said without preamble, "about the house." I invited her to sit. She declined, her hands clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles shone white in the fading light. "There was never a crib in that crawl space," she said, "not when we lived there." "But you know something about it," I said. It wasn't a question. Elena's gaze drifted past me, toward the darkening horizon. "Before we lived in that house, there was another family, the Hunters. They had a little girl named Emma." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "She disappeared when she was 2. They searched everywhere, but she was never found." I remembered the case vaguely. It had been before my time on the force, nearly 30 years ago. A cold case that had eventually been filed away, unsolved. The mother insisted someone had taken Emma from her crib during the night, Elena continued, but the father, There were rumors he'd been drinking heavily that weekend, that he might have done something and forgotten. "And the note," I asked, "this time don't forget. What does that mean?" Alina finally looked at me, her eyes clear and direct for the first time. "I don't know, but after we moved in, I started having dreams about a little girl. She would stand at the foot of our bed just watching. She never spoke, never moved, just watched." Alina left soon after, refusing to come with me to the house or speak with the Harmons. As I watched her drive away, I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she was telling. The next day I had the crawl space thoroughly searched. No human remains were found, no evidence of any crime. The crib and the lamb were taken into evidence, and the Harmons decided to sell the house. They couldn't live there anymore, they said, not with the knowledge of what lay beneath their feet. 3 days before my retirement, a package arrived at the station for me. Inside was a faded photograph of a smiling toddler holding the same stuffed lamb we'd found in the crib. On the back, in faded ink, was written Emma, age 2, and a date from 30 years ago. There was no note, no return address, just the photograph of a child who had vanished without a trace. I still drive by the house sometimes. It's empty again, the FOR sale sign swaying gently in the breeze. At night, if you look carefully at the small ground-level window that leads to the crawl space, you might see a faint glow, as if someone left a light on underneath the house. Or perhaps it's just the reflection of the moon, playing tricks on an old detective's eyes. But I know what I saw in that crawl space, and sometimes in the quiet hours before dawn, I wonder about that spinning mobile, moving without a draft or a touch. I wonder about the note, "This time don't forget." And I wonder who or what is making sure we remember Emma. Story 5. Every night she locked the house. Every night she checked twice. But one morning she found a pair of muddy children's shoes sitting neatly on the welcome mat behind the kitchen. When she asked the neighbors, they all said the same thing: those aren't the first. I've always been drawn to the small towns of rural Pennsylvania. There's something about the morning mist that settles between the trees and the way silence seems to physically rest upon the old Victorian houses. That's why when the Westbrook case crossed my desk, I drove out personally rather than sending one of my junior investigators. The house sat at the end of Maple Lane, a beautiful old colonial with white trim and navy shutters. It stood apart from its neighbors by about 100 yards on either side, not isolated by country standards, but private enough. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, I noticed how the back of the property faded into dense woods. Sarah Westbrook met me at the front door. Her handshake was firm, but I could feel a slight tremor. Mid-40s, shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, dark circles under intelligent eyes. She'd been waiting for someone to take her seriously. "Thank you for coming," she said, leading me through a kitchen that smelled of coffee and cinnamon. "The police think I'm being paranoid." I set my recorder on her kitchen table, the small red light blinking softly as we settled into wooden chairs worn smooth by years of use. "Tell me again from the beginning," I said, keeping my voice low and even, "about the shoes." Sarah's fingers curled around her mug as she stared past me through the window that overlooked her backyard. "I'm meticulous about locking up. Ever since David passed 3 years ago, I've been careful. Every night at 9, I go through the same routine. Front door, lock chain, back door, deadbolt security bar, windows all latched." I nodded, noting how her voice remained steady despite the obvious anxiety behind her words. 2 weeks ago Tuesday morning, I came downstairs to make coffee. When I glanced out the kitchen window, I saw them, small, muddy children's sneakers, placed perfectly parallel on the welcome mat outside the back door. "Your first thought," I asked softly. "That a neighborhood kid had left them, but they were positioned so, deliberately, like someone had taken them off and arranged them just so." She traced a pattern on the wooden table. "I have no children. My nearest neighbor with kids is the Harrises, and they're half a mile down the road." I made a note, "And you're certain they weren't there the night before?" "Absolutely certain. I took the trash out at 8:45 p.m. There were no shoes then." The house creaked around us, an old home settling into its foundations. "What did the police say?" Sarah gave a tight smile. "Officer Grayson suggested kids playing a prank, told me to install a camera if I was worried." She hesitated, but when I mentioned it to my neighbor Ellen while getting my mail, she went pale. Said there had been shoes left at the Miller place last summer, and before that at a house on Orchard Street. "A pattern, nothing excites and unsettles an investigator quite like a pattern." "Did anything happen to those families?" "The Millers moved away 2 months later. The house on Orchard Street burned down in what was ruled an electrical fire. No casualties, the family was on vacation." I made another note, the scratch of my pen, abnormally loud in the quiet kitchen. "And there have been other instances. The neighbors said those aren't the first." Sarah nodded slowly. "Ellen made some calls, 5 incidents in the past 3 years. Always children's shoes left outside a back entrance. Always homes somewhat isolated. Always belonging to single women or families where the husband travels frequently." The implications hung in the air between us. Someone was watching, identifying vulnerable households. "May I see the shoes?" She led me to a mudroom off the kitchen. On a shelf, wrapped in a clear plastic bag, sat a pair of small blue sneakers, size 4 children's, generic brand. The mud on them had dried, dark and cracking. I know I should have left them for the police, but I couldn't stand looking at them on my welcome mat. I studied them through the plastic. The mud pattern was interesting, concentrated at the toes and sides, with near-perfect symmetry between the left and right shoe. "Has anything else happened since? Any noises at night, items moved, signs of attempted entry?" "Nothing I can prove," Sarah said, hesitating, "but I feel watched. The house seems different. The air feels disturbed, like someone's been breathing in spaces where I'm not." I've learned to trust when people say spaces feel different. Our subconscious minds notice subtle changes our conscious minds dismiss. I spent that afternoon and evening examining the property. The ground behind the welcome mat showed no obvious footprints, but the soil composition there was mostly clay and gravel, difficult for impression evidence. The woods behind the house stretched for nearly a mile before reaching another road, plenty of cover for someone watching the property. I installed 3 discrete cameras, one facing the back door, one covering the tree line, and one monitoring the side path that led around to the front. Sarah offered me the guest room, but I opted to sleep in my car parked across the street. Sometimes observation is the only way forward. 3 uneventful nights passed. On the 4th morning, my phone alerted me to motion at the back door. The timestamp read 3:42 a.m. The footage was grainy in the low light, but clear enough. A figure, slender and of medium height, approached from the woods. They moved with unusual caution, pausing frequently as if listening. They carried something small in their hands. At the welcome mat, they bent down, placed the object, another pair of shoes, bigger than the last, and retreated the way they had come. The entire event took less than 30 seconds. I immediately called Sarah, told her to stay upstairs, and approached the house. The shoes were still there, men's work boots this time, caked with the same distinctive mud. Unlike the children's shoes, these were well worn, the leather cracked and softened by use. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Grayson's demeanor had changed significantly from dismissive to concerned. They took the boots, dusted for prints, and collected soil samples from the treads. The lab results came back this morning, Grayson told me 3 days later. The soil contains a particular mineral composition only found in one area nearby, the old quarry site 3 miles north. It's been abandoned for decades. That afternoon, 3 police cruisers made their way to the abandoned quarry. I followed at a distance, my heart beating a steady rhythm against my ribs. The quarry was a gaping wound in the earth, partially filled with murky water at its deepest point. Surrounding it were dilapidated buildings, former offices, and equipment storage. In the largest structure they found him, Thomas Evers, 53, former real estate agent. His modest living space was surrounded by walls covered in photographs, dozens of houses, all with similar characteristics to Sarah's, and shoes. Pairs upon pairs of shoes arranged meticulously by size, all cleaned of mud and dirt. The most disturbing discovery lay in a leather-bound journal. Detailed notes on the occupants of each house, their routines when they left, when they returned, how many nights their homes stood empty, floor plans sketched with architectural precision, and dates when he had entered these homes, walked their halls while the occupants slept, touched their belongings, sometimes taken small mementos. The shoes were his calling card, a signature left before he would eventually enter the home. A psychological preparation both for himself and his intended victims. The children's shoes at Sarah's house had been the first pair, a warning that her sanctuary was already compromised in his mind. Sarah Westbrook was lucky. Her caution, her sensitivity to the unsettling change in her environment had potentially saved her from becoming another notation in Thomas Evers' journal. 5 other women in the county hadn't reported their shoe incidents, assuming them to be pranks or neighborhood children. When I visited Sarah a week later, she was packing. "I know he's in custody," she said, carefully wrapping a framed photo of her late husband. "But I can't stay here knowing he stood outside my door, watching me through my windows." I understood some violations can't be undone. Some spaces can never feel safe again. As I drove away from Westbrook's house for the final time, I thought about the muddy shoes and what they represented, a boundary crossed, an announcement of intent. In my 20 years of investigating, I've learned that the most dangerous predators often announce themselves in ways that seem almost trivial, almost dismissible. But I've also learned to listen when people say something feels wrong, when the air in their home seems somehow different, when muddy shoes appear where no shoes should be. Because sometimes the smallest warning signs precede the deepest violations, and sometimes noticing them in time makes all the difference. I still check my own back door twice every night. Story 6, she bought it new, sealed, unused, but when she dropped it and the bristles cracked loose, she noticed strands of hair, black, long, and knotted. A DNA test confirmed the hair belonged to a missing woman from another state, a woman with her exact birth date. I still remember the first time Sarah Pearson called our precinct. Her voice carried that unmistakable quiver of someone trying desperately to sound calm while everything inside them was unraveling. The kind of voice I'd heard countless times in my 15 years as a detective. The afternoon light filtered through dusty blinds as I pressed the receiver closer to my ear, pen hovering above my notepad. "Detective Mills," I answered, the familiar weight of the name settling on my tongue. "I need to report something unusual," she said, pausing between words as if testing each one before releasing it. "It's about a hairbrush I bought." In all my years working cold cases in the quiet suburb of Millfield, Connecticut, I'd never had a case begin with a hairbrush. Missing persons, yes, unexplained deaths, too many, but a hairbrush purchased from Wilson's Pharmacy on Main Street, that was new territory. Sarah agreed to meet me at the station that same evening. The soft hum of fluorescent lights accompanied us as she carefully placed a plastic bag containing the hairbrush on the table between us. It was nothing remarkable, black plastic with rounded bristles, the kind found in thousands of bathrooms across America. "I purchased it last Tuesday," she explained, her fingers fidgeting with the silver bracelet on her wrist. It was sealed in plastic, brand new. I'd used it maybe 3 times when I dropped it on my bathroom tile. The back panel cracked, and that's when I saw them. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Hair strands that weren't mine, black, long, tangled together. My hair is blonde, detective." I nodded, studying the brush through the clear plastic. "And what made you bring this to the police, Ms. Pearson? Finding someone else's hair in a new product is unusual, but—" "I work in a laboratory," she interrupted, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made me straighten in my chair. "I have access to basic DNA testing equipment. I was curious, maybe a bit paranoid after finding those strands, so I tested them." The room seemed to grow quieter as she continued. "The results showed a familial connection, detective, a close one, as if—" She swallowed hard, "as if this person was related to me, but I have no relatives with black hair. None." I made notes in my pad, the scratch of pen on paper unnaturally loud in the stillness of the room. "And you're certain the brush was new, factory sealed?" Sarah nodded emphatically. "Completely sealed. I had to cut through the plastic with scissors." Something about her certainty, combined with the clinical precision of her account, made me take the case more seriously than I might have otherwise. I submitted the brush for formal testing through our department channels, expecting nothing more than confirmation of contamination during manufacturing. 3 weeks passed. The familiar rhythm of other cases nearly pushed Sarah Pearson's hairbrush from my mind until the lab results arrived on a particularly gray Tuesday morning. I read them once, twice, then a third time, the coffee in my mug growing cold beside me. The hair belonged to Eliza Morrow, age 34, reported missing from her home in Burlington, Vermont 8 months prior. The case had gone cold after 2 months of investigation yielded no leads, and there was one detail that caused the hair on my arms to rise. Eliza Morrow was born on April 17, 1989, the exact same birth date as Sarah Pearson. I drove to Wilson's Pharmacy that afternoon. The manager, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, led me to their stockroom where he checked their inventory records. "We received a shipment of those brushes 6 months ago," he explained, scrolling through records on a computer screen that cast a pale blue glow on his face. 12 units, all from Bellamy Personal Care Products out of Michigan. When I contacted Bellamy, their representative sounded increasingly uncomfortable as our conversation progressed. Yes, they manufactured the brushes. No, there was no way human hair could be sealed inside during production. Their facilities were automated, sterile, regularly inspected. Perhaps, the representative suggested hesitantly, the consumer is mistaken about the brush being new. But Sarah Pearson wasn't mistaken. The receipt confirmed her purchase. Store cameras showed her selecting the sealed brush from the display. Something was very wrong, and the quiet discomfort I'd felt since reading the lab report began to solidify into something heavier. I requested the files on Eliza Morrow from the Burlington Police Department. They arrived 2 days later, a slim folder containing photographs of a woman with long black hair and green eyes, the same shade of green as Sarah Pearson's. Their facial structures were different enough that they wouldn't be mistaken for sisters, but there was something in the set of their eyes, the curve of their jawlines. The final page of the report contained Eliza's birth certificate, father unknown, mother Catherine Morrow, deceased 2010, birth location St. Mary's Hospital, Hartford, Connecticut. My fingers hovered over my phone. I'd looked up Sarah's background when the case began, standard procedure. She was born at Hartford Memorial, just across town from St. Mary's, both women born on the same day, in hospitals less than 3 miles apart. When I called Sarah to share what I'd found, her breathing became shallow, audible through the phone. "I was adopted," she whispered. "Closed adoption. I never knew my birth parents." The pieces began to align themselves with a precision that felt almost predetermined. 2 babies born the same day in neighboring hospitals, one raised by her birth mother in Vermont, one adopted by a family in Connecticut, both with the same distinctive green eyes. The factory that produced the hairbrushes was located 40 miles from Burlington, Vermont, where Eliza had disappeared. A subsequent investigation revealed that one of the night shift quality control workers had been Eliza's neighbor. He remembered her, the quiet woman who lived alone, who sometimes nodded to him when they crossed paths collecting mail. When questioned, he admitted to finding strands of hair on his uniform after helping search the woods behind their apartment complex in the days following her disappearance. He couldn't explain how those strands might have ended up in a sealed product or claimed not to remember. But the most disturbing discovery came 3 months into the investigation, when a construction crew breaking ground for a new building on the factory premises uncovered human remains. DNA confirmed it was Eliza Morrow. The factory worker's apartment yielded no evidence connecting him to her death. His alibi for the night she disappeared was confirmed by security footage at the all-night diner where he ate after his shift. The case stalled again, this time with more questions than answers. Sarah Pearson moved away from Connecticut 6 months after our first meeting. Before leaving, she visited me at the station one last time, her face thinner than I remembered, shadows beneath her eyes. "Do you believe in messages from beyond?" she asked quietly as she stood to leave. Sometimes I think she found a way to reach out to me, her twin, to tell me what happened to her. I didn't answer. In 15 years of detective work, I'd learned to trust evidence, facts, the tangible breadcrumbs that lead to truth. But sometimes, in cases like this one, the line between coincidence and something more deliberate blurs in ways I can't explain. The hairbrush sits in our evidence room now, sealed in plastic much like it was when Sarah first purchased it. Sometimes when I pass by, I find myself pausing, wondering about the 2 women born on the same day with the same eyes. one found, one still searching. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between cases, I wonder what other messages might be waiting to be discovered, hidden in the ordinary objects that surround us all. Story 7, I still remember the weight of that laptop in my hands. It was nothing special, one of those generic rental models you pick up at airport kiosks when your own device fails you mid-business trip. Lightweight plastic with too many fingerprints on the screen and a keyboard that felt just slightly off, as if the space between each key had been stretched by a millimeter. The kind of computer you never expect to change your life. The rain tapped gently against my hotel window that night in Denver, creating a soothing rhythm as I settled in to check my email. The rental place had assured me the laptop was wiped clean. Factory reset before every rental, the clerk had said with practiced confidence, barely looking up from his phone. I believed him. We all believe what makes our lives simpler. The desktop was indeed empty save for the recycling bin icon and a single folder labeled System 32 Backup tucked away in the corner. I ignored it at first, just another system folder that wouldn't matter to a temporary user like me. But as I finished sending my presentation to tomorrow's clients, something about that folder nagged at me. It shouldn't have been there on a clean system. When I tried to delete it, a password prompt appeared. I clicked cancel and tried again. The same prompt returned, patient and unyielding. A folder that wouldn't delete on a freshly wiped computer. It was a small anomaly, but in my line of work as a data security consultant, small anomalies are what we're paid to notice. I sat back in the stiff hotel chair, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The room felt colder suddenly. The rain outside had intensified, no longer a gentle patter, but a persistent drumming against the glass. I opened the command prompt and began typing, using a bypass technique I'd learned years ago. A technique that shouldn't be necessary on a rental laptop, but curiosity is a powerful force when you're alone in a hotel room with nothing but time and an unexplained digital lock before you. The folder resisted my first 3 attempts. On the 4th, it relented with a simple command execution. No dramatic moment, no warning, just a folder suddenly opening on screen, revealing hundreds of nested subfolders, each labeled with dates going back 18 months. My breath caught as I clicked on the most recent one. Audio files, dozens of them. I clicked on one labeled Call Mom Tuesday, MP3. My own voice filled the room. Hey Mom, just checking in before my flight to Denver tomorrow. It was a call I'd made 3 days ago from my apartment in Seattle. I sat perfectly still, listening to my own words echoing back at me. Words spoken in privacy, now playing through the tinny speakers of a rental laptop in a city I'd only arrived in yesterday. With numb fingers, I opened another file. This one was my conversation with my doctor about my recent blood test results. Then another, me ordering takeout last month, each file perfectly labeled with the date and context. The video folder was worse. There I was making coffee in my kitchen. There I was working at my desk. There I was asleep in my own bedroom, the night vision giving everything a ghostly green glow. Some were taken from angles that suggested hidden cameras. Others appeared to be from my own devices, my laptop's webcam, my phone's camera. But it was the last folder that truly froze my blood. Labeled locations, it contained hundreds of images. Me walking down streets I recognized in Seattle, but also me in a coffee shop in Portland that I'd visited only once. Me at a conference in Chicago last year. Me pumping gas at a station in a town I'd driven through on a road trip with no stops. Some of these places I had never been to, or at least I had no memory of being there. Yet there I was, caught in candid moments, unaware and vulnerable. In some images, the same figure appeared in the background, a tall, thin shape just out of focus, watching. I checked the laptop's serial number and manufacturer details. Nothing matched the information on my rental agreement. This wasn't the laptop I was supposed to have. Someone had switched it, ensuring this specific device would reach my hands. The rain had stopped now. The silence in the room was absolute as I scrolled through file after file. My entire life had been under surveillance, meticulously documented and organized by someone who knew my movements before I made them. I should have called the police immediately. I should have shut down the laptop and walked away. Instead, I opened one last folder, simply labeled Next. Inside was a single text document containing an address in Denver, an address just 3 blocks from my hotel. As I stared at those numbers and street name, a new email notification appeared in the corner of the screen. The subject line read, "We see you found it, we've been waiting." The sender's name was my own. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message from an unknown number. "Do you want to know why? The door will be unlocked." I sit here now writing this account as the digital clock on the laptop turns to midnight. The address is so close. I could walk there in 5 minutes. Logic says to call the police, but logic abandons you when you discover your life isn't your own anymore. When someone has been watching you sleep and predicting your movements and collecting your most private moments like butterflies pinned under glass. The most terrifying part isn't the surveillance. It's the realization that this laptop wasn't placed in my hands by accident. Whoever is watching me wanted me to find these files. They wanted me to see how completely they owned my privacy, and now they're inviting me to learn why. The hotel room door feels like the only barrier between my old life and whatever waits beyond it. I've read enough true crime to know how these stories usually end, but the human mind craves resolution more than it fears danger. My hand is on the doorknob now. In my pocket, the address is written on the hotel notepad. The hallway outside is dark and quiet, the other guests long asleep. I should join them in safety, call someone for help, wait until morning. Instead, I step into the hallway and pull the door closed behind me. Some mysteries demand answers, even when every instinct screams to run the other way. Even when you know with absolute certainty that you're walking into a trap designed just for you. Because the most haunting question isn't who's been watching me all this time. It's why they've finally decided to let me know. Story 8, I still remember the first time Emily Lawrence called me about the stain. It was early October, when the evening air turns crisp in Ridgewood Heights, and the sound of dry leaves scraping across sidewalks becomes nature's white noise machine. I was sorting through case files in my small office downtown, a converted storage room with a single window that overlooked nothing but brick and mortar. "Detective Harmon," I answered, voice low and measured as I always kept it. "There's something in my wall," she said without introduction. I think it might be blood." I've been a private investigator in this town for 17 years. Most of my cases involve insurance fraud, unfaithful spouses, or locating people who don't want to be found. Bloodstains weren't typically in my wheelhouse, but something in her voice, a tremor that spoke of genuine fear rather than melodrama, made me agree to come over. Emily lived in one of those pre-war apartment buildings on Maple Street, the kind with solid wood doors and brass fixtures that had dulled with age. The elevator groaned as it lifted me to the 4th floor, its dim yellow light flickering at regular intervals. Down the hallway, apartment 4C waited at the end, partially shadowed where the hallway light had burned out. She opened the door before I could knock. Mid-30s, dark circles under green eyes, hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. She wore a paint-splattered t-shirt and jeans. Behind her, the apartment smelled of fresh paint and something else, something metallic. "Thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside. "I know it sounds crazy." "I've heard crazier," I assured her, following her into the living room where dropped cloths covered most of the furniture. "Tell me about this stain." Emily led me to the wall beside the entryway. It was freshly painted, a warm beige color, still glossy in places where it hadn't fully dried. But there, just above the light switch, was a faint reddish-brown smear about the size of a thumbprint. "I moved in 3 weeks ago," she explained, keeping her distance from the wall. "The first night I noticed this mark, I thought maybe the previous tenant had nicked themselves or something, so I painted over it." She gestured to the paint can stacked in the corner, but the next morning it was back, exactly the same size, exactly the same place. I stepped closer, examining the stain without touching it. Up close, it did look like blood, oxidized and sunken slightly into the paint. "I painted over it again," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sanded it first, applied 2 coats. This morning, there it was again." Outside, the wind picked up, making the old windows rattle gently in their frames. I pulled a small flashlight from my pocket and angled the beam to catch the stain in profile. "Have you tried cleaning it with bleach?" I asked. "Everything bleach, industrial cleaners. I even tried scraping the surface off with a razor." I nodded slowly, considering the possibilities. Water damage could sometimes bleed through paint, but this wasn't the right color, and the precision of its reappearance was unusual. "What do you know about the previous tenants?" I asked, turning to face her. Emily shrugged. "Not much. The landlord said an older couple lived here for about 30 years. They moved to Florida. Before I signed the lease, a young woman had it for a few months but broke her lease early." That caught my attention. Did the landlord say why? "Just that she found a place closer to her work." I nodded, making a mental note to look into that. "Do you mind if I take a closer look at the wall itself? Maybe open it up a bit?" Her eyes widened. "You mean cut into it?" "Just a small section. If there's something behind there causing the stain, we should find out what it is." After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Whatever it takes to make it stop." I retrieved a small utility knife from my car and returned to find Emily standing in the same spot, staring at the stain as if it might grow before her eyes. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the occasional creak of settling wood. "This building was constructed in the 1930s, I said conversationally as I prepared to cut into the drywall, trying to ease the tension. "Lot of history in these walls." "That's what attracted me to it," she replied, watching my hands. "I'm a historian. I work at the university archives." I paused, knife poised against the wall. "What kind of history do you specialize in?" "Local, particularly the textile mill strike of 1937. I carefully cut a small square around the stain, taking care not to damage more of the wall than necessary. The drywall came away easily, revealing the space between the studs. I shined my flashlight inside. There, etched into the wooden stud behind the drywall, was a name, carved deep into the wood with what must have been a knife or sharp tool. "Emily." Just that, nothing else, but the name was unmistakable. I felt her step closer, peering over my shoulder. Her sharp intake of breath told me she'd seen it too. That's my name," she whispered. "Could be a coincidence," I said, not believing it myself. Previous tenant could have been named Emily too. She shook her head. The landlord said the couple was named Grayson, and the woman after them was Sophia something. I expanded the hole slightly, revealing more of the wooden stud. Below the name was a date, November 12, 1937. "The mill strike," Emily said softly. "That was during the height of it." I pulled out my phone and made a quick search. Emily, was there an Emily connected to the textile strike? She nodded slowly, her face paling. Emily Thornton. She was one of the strike organizers who disappeared. They never found her body, but she trailed off, eyes fixed on the name carved into the wood. "But what?" I prompted gently. "There were rumors she was killed by company men, that they made an example of her." The silence that followed felt heavy, pregnant with implication. I examined the wood more closely and noticed that the area around the carving was darker than the rest, as if it had absorbed something over time. Something that had seeped slowly back to the surface, again and again, for almost 90 years. Over the next weeks, I dug deeper into the history of the building and Emily Thornton's disappearance. The apartment had once been company housing for mill managers. Records showed that on November 12, 1937, a manager named Richard Grayson had reported a break-in. Nothing was stolen, according to his statement, but the same night, Emily Thornton was last seen leaving a union meeting headed in the direction of the company housing. I found old newspaper photos of Emily Thornton. She looked nothing like my client, yet there was something in the determined set of her jaw, the intelligent eyes, that resonated with the woman I'd come to know. Two Emilys, separated by time but connected by purpose and place. We never found Emily Thornton's remains. The current building owner refused to allow us to open up more of the walls, and without concrete evidence, the police weren't interested in a cold case from nearly a century ago. But the stain never reappeared after we discovered the name. My client Emily decided to stay in the apartment. She placed a small framed photo of Emily Thornton on the wall where the stain had been, a simple acknowledgement of presence, of memory. Sometimes when I visit her for coffee, I notice how she touches the frame lightly as she passes, a gesture of respect from one historian to another. And I wonder about the thin membrane between past and present, how some stories refuse to be painted over, how they seep through the layers we place between ourselves and history's uncomfortable truths. The wood remembers what happened in that room, and now so do we. Story 9, he was 5, just a neighbor's kid, but he stopped in the hallway one day and looked up at her. Smiling, he whispered, "You buried her under the roses, didn't you?" No one had ever said that aloud, not even her. I still remember the first time Emily Sullivan told me this story. We were sitting in her small office at the county prosecutor's building, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her cluttered desk. The slow ceiling fan barely moved the heavy summer air. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly as she pushed a manila folder toward me. 23 years I've been investigating cold cases, she said, her voice like worn velvet. This one still keeps me awake. The folder contained photographs of a modest suburban home in Millfield, Connecticut. Nothing remarkable about it. White siding, navy shutters, a neatly maintained garden with a prominent rose bed bordering the front walkway. The kind of house you'd drive past 1,000 times without a second glance. but it was what lay beneath those roses that had brought me here. The case began in the spring of 2014 when Margaret Holloway, a respected elementary school teacher, reported her younger sister Abigail missing. According to Margaret, Abigail had been staying with her after a difficult breakup but had suddenly disappeared, leaving behind her wallet, phone, and medication for bipolar disorder. At first it seemed straightforward, Emily explained, the soft tap of her fingernails against her coffee mug punctuating her words. Family member reports someone missing, we investigate, usually find them within 48 hours, but something about Margaret's demeanor struck the responding officer as off. The photographs showed Margaret Holloway, 52 at the time, with carefully maintained blonde hair and wire-rimmed glasses. She stood rigidly beside her rose garden, arms crossed tightly across her chest as she spoke with officers. Her expression was composed, but there was something in her eyes, something hollow. I carefully examined each photograph, letting the weight of them sink into my consciousness. The investigation had initially proceeded by the book. Officers took statements from neighbors, colleagues, Abigail's ex-boyfriend. They searched Margaret's home and found nothing unusual. Abigail's car was still parked in the garage. Her credit cards remained unused. We had no body, no crime scene, no evidence of foul play, Emily continued, her words measured, unhurried. Just a feeling that something wasn't right. The case might have gone cold immediately if not for Jacob Bennett, the 5-year-old son of Margaret's next-door neighbor. Children see things differently, Emily mused. They notice details adults miss. They haven't learned to ignore their instincts. Jacob and his mother often passed Margaret's house on their way to the neighborhood playground. By all accounts, Margaret was friendly with the boy, sometimes offering him homemade cookies or complimenting his drawings when they crossed paths. But on a warm May afternoon, 3 weeks after Abigail's disappearance, something changed. Margaret was returning from grocery shopping when she encountered Jacob in the hallway of their adjoining townhomes. According to his mother, who was several steps ahead, Jacob stopped, looked up at Margaret, and with an innocent smile, whispered those chilling words. "You buried her under the roses, didn't you?" Margaret dropped her grocery bags. A jar of pasta sauce shattered on the floor, red spreading like blood across the beige carpet. She stared at the boy, then at his confused mother, before hurriedly gathering her remaining items and rushing into her home. The neighbor thought it was just a strange child's comment, Emily said, leaning back in her chair. The wood creaked softly under her weight, but she mentioned it to her husband, who mentioned it to a friend on the police force. Eventually, it reached our office. I could feel the rhythm of the investigation slowing, deepening. Emily pulled out more photographs, close-ups of the rose garden, its soil dark and rich, the blooms unusually vibrant for early spring. When we requested permission to search the garden, Margaret became resistant, claimed the roses were delicate, that disturbing them would kill plants she'd nurtured for decades. Emily's voice lowered. We obtained a warrant. The excavation began on a misty morning. Forensic technicians worked methodically, removing each rose bush with care, preserving the root systems. Neighbors gathered at a distance, watching silently as the garden was dismantled piece by piece. 6 feet down, beneath the central rose bush, Margaret's prize-winning crimson glory, they found her. Abigail Holloway had been wrapped in a plastic shower curtain, her body remarkably preserved by the cool, clay-heavy soil. The medical examiner determined she had died from asphyxiation. Soil analysis revealed high concentrations of fertilizer, explaining the rose's exceptional bloom. When confronted with the evidence, Margaret didn't deny it, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. She simply asked if she could change clothes before being taken to the station, as if she were going out for Sunday dinner. The investigation uncovered a complex relationship between the sisters. Abigail had struggled with mental illness for years, with Margaret often serving as her caretaker. Neighbors reported hearing arguments in the weeks before the disappearance. Financial records showed Margaret was the sole beneficiary of Abigail's substantial life insurance policy. But it was the diary that really told the story, Emily said, sliding another document across the desk. Photocopied pages of a journal written in Margaret's meticulous handwriting. The entries detailed growing resentment, the burden of caring for her sister, and finally, a chilling description of holding a pillow over Abigail's face until she stopped struggling. The final entry read simply, "The roses will bloom beautifully this year." During questioning, Margaret remained composed, answering each question with unnerving calm. When asked about Jacob's comment, she smiled faintly. "Children have such vivid imaginations," she replied. But it wasn't imagination. Somehow this 5-year-old boy had known what no one else suspected. When gently questioned by a child psychologist, Jacob couldn't explain how he knew. He said only that sometimes he saw things that grown-ups didn't see. Margaret Holloway was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. The rose garden was eventually replanted by new homeowners who knew nothing of its history. I sat with Emily in the lengthening shadows of her office, contemplating the case that still haunted her. "What bothers me most isn't that she killed her sister," Emily said finally. "It's that she might have gotten away with it entirely if not for a child's inexplicable comment." As I gathered my notes to leave, I asked the question that had been lingering in my mind throughout our conversation. "What happened to Jacob?" Emily closed the folder slowly. "He's in high school now. His mother says he's mostly normal, well-adjusted. But she mentioned once that he still refuses to walk past certain houses in the neighborhood. Won't explain why." I thanked Emily for her time and stepped out into the cool evening air. As I walked to my car, I found myself studying the neatly maintained gardens of the surrounding homes, wondering what secrets might lie beneath their cultivated surfaces. Some mysteries are solved. Others simply wait beneath the soil, nourishing beautiful things that grow in darkness. Story 10. The gentle current whispered secrets as it lazily meandered that tranquil morning, the water a mirror reflecting the serene sky above. The fisherman, his senses attuned to the rhythms of the river, almost missed it, a lone suitcase bobbing near the shore, a silent enigma in the stillness. At first glance, it seemed like a careless discard of old clothes, but as he approached, a pungent odor wafted towards him, thick and suffocating, impossible to ignore. The suitcase, wrapped in chains, bore the scars of time and neglect, its edges rusted from exposure to the elements. When authorities pried open the grim container, it revealed not garments, but a macabre sight, hair matted with water, fingers frozen in a haunting grip. And at the bottom, a chilling note whispered ominous words, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a handkerchief pressed delicately to her nose to ward off the cloying stench that lingered in the air. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and now pale skin marked by the river's caress, lay silent and still. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail before the body was tenderly carried away. What struck Mercer amidst the grim tableau was not just the methodical disposal of the victim, but the eerie reverence shown to her appearance: manicured nails, recently styled hair, adorned in luxurious attire. As she gazed out at the tranquil waters lapping against the muddy shore, Mercer murmured softly, she was not just discarded, she was arranged, presented. The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her expertise in selling high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she lived a solitary life in an affluent neighborhood, her existence shrouded in ambition, precision, and secrecy. Colleagues spoke of her with admiration, painting a portrait of a woman devoted to her craft. Her disappearance was reported by her assistant, a crucial showing left unattended, a lucrative deal left hanging in the balance. Investigators meticulously combed through Walsh's pristine, modernist abode, each corner a testament to her meticulous nature. Yet amidst the aura of perfection, a single drawer slightly ajar in her home office caught their attention. Inside, a leather-bound journal lay in silent accusation. The final entry spoke of unseen eyes, of a lurking presence that haunted her days. Digital breadcrumbs led to a revelation: mysterious emails, cryptic messages that whispered of an unseen watcher, a voyeur of perfection. Mercer pieced together the fragments: a woman's fear, her desperate attempts to fortify her sanctuary against an unknown threat. The breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: a pawnshop owner, a teller of tales in the night. A distinctive emerald necklace, a missing piece of the puzzle, led detectives to Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker with a hidden darkness. The surveillance tapes painted a damning portrait of Linden's clandestine visits to Walsh's domain, a shadow slipping in and out unnoticed, a specter among the living. Within Linden's modest abode, a chilling tableau awaited the walls, adorned with stolen glimpses of women, their likenesses captured without consent. A shrine to his obsessions, a macabre collection of relics and memories, a twisted homage to his victims. In the frigid confines of the interrogation room, Linden's facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing the abyss within. His words, devoid of emotion, laid bare his twisted logic, his warped perception of imperfection. To him, these women, these paragons of flawlessness, were marred by unseen blemishes, by imperceptible flaws that only he could discern. The search for truth led investigators to remote locales, to forgotten suitcases harboring silent witnesses to Linden's depravity. Each victim a reflection of the last, a mirror held up to his shattered psyche. The trial unfolded, a grim spectacle of justice, as the families of the fallen watched in silent grief. For Mercer, the case closed, but the shadows lingered, questions unanswered in the depths of her mind. What drove Linden to his heinous acts, what twisted narrative fueled his obsession with perfection? As the river flowed on, its waters cleansing all traces of the past, Mercer sat in the quiet of the precinct, haunted by the echoes of those chilling notebooks, a reminder that in the veneer of normalcy, darkness lurks, waiting to uncoil its tendrils. In the hushed stillness of the night, where dreams intertwine with reality, she pondered the enigma of human nature, the fragile facade of perfection shattered by the jagged edges of obsession. And in the silence she heard the whispers of the river, a lullaby of secrets and shadows, a soothing cadence that lulled her to sleep, cradled by the mysteries that danced in the moonlit waters. Story 11, the apartment sat silent and empty for months before the new tenants arrived, unaware of the secrets lurking within its walls. Dust settled like a heavy blanket, veiling the past that lay hidden. One door, however, refused to yield to their curiosity. It remained locked from the inside, guarding a mystery within. With a collective breath, they summoned the courage to force it open, expecting the mundane sight of forgotten belongings. Instead, they were met with a sight that sent shivers down their spines. The walls bore witness to a haunting tale, etched with deep, erratic scratches that spoke of desperation and confinement. Nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message that whispered of unseen horrors. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in unraveling enigmas of the human psyche, felt a chill crawl up her spine at the sight before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or violence that unsettled her, but the silent plea etched into those walls, a silent cry for help from a soul trapped in darkness. "Call forensics immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the eerie scene, "and gather the records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone glowed ominously. "I know what you did." The jittery landlord, his palms clammy with unease, shared tidbits about the mysterious former tenant, a young woman named Emma Caldwell, who had vanished into the night, leaving rent unpaid. Quiet, kept to herself, left abruptly about 6 months ago, he stammered, avoiding the gaze of the accursed closet. No trouble caused. Forensic analysis uncovered a chilling truth within those scratched walls, traces of multiple blood samples, mostly belonging to Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old who had vanished without a trace. Yet 2 DNA profiles stood out, one unidentified, the other belonging to a man pronounced dead 2 years prior. Shaw furrowed her brow in disbelief at the revelation, a puzzle unraveling before her eyes. Emma's dwelling spoke volumes of a life interrupted, unopened mail, a forgotten coffee mug, a bed meticulously made. Her phone records hinted at a sudden silence in her once bustling life, punctuated by a flurry of calls from an unknown number in the weeks leading to her disappearance. Her sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name given, just described as intense and private. As the investigation deepened, a sinister pattern emerged. Surveillance footage caught a shadowy figure trailing Emma into her sanctuary, face obscured by a cap, a harbinger of the dark events to come. The discovery of partial fingerprints within the closet led them to a startling revelation. Derek Mercer, a man presumed dead, had left his mark on Emma's prison. He staged his demise, Shaw concluded, her mind racing to connect the sinister dots. But why and what ties him to Emma's plight? The enigmatic DNA sample led them to another missing soul, Lynette Porter, who had vanished years prior. Through a web of evidence, a twisted tapestry emerged, linking Emma and Lynette to a malevolent force lurking in the shadows. Journals chronicling Mercer's obsession with dominance, photographs of his captives, and harrowing video recordings unveiled the true extent of his depravity. Lynette's hollow gaze spoke of unspeakable horrors endured in captivity, a mere pawn in Mercer's twisted game of control and torment. The manhunt for the elusive Mercer spanned far and wide, a relentless pursuit of a predator hiding in plain sight. With each revelation, the chilling truth of his depravity unfolded, sending shivers down the spines of all who pursued justice. When Mercer was finally apprehended, a semblance of calm enveloped him, a facade of normalcy that belied the darkness within. "She sent that message herself," he intoned, a smirk playing on his lips. "She craved the attention, the thrill of the hunt. She got what she deserved." The trial unveiled a macabre tapestry of deceit and cruelty woven by Mercer, his elaborate ruse to evade justice, his sadistic pleasure in inflicting suffering on the innocent. Emma's fate, sealed within that closet, remained a haunting enigma, her voice echoing in the recesses of Shaw's mind. As the gavel fell, sealing Mercer's fate with a life sentence, a flicker of satisfaction danced in his eyes, a twisted victory known only to him. But in the courtroom stood Lynette Porter, a beacon of resilience amidst the darkness, her words a testament to the strength that endures beyond the confines of captivity. The legacy of Emma's plight reshaped the landscape of missing persons investigations, a stark reminder of the horrors that lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Detective Shaw, keeper of Emma's silent plea, vowed to never forget the silent screams etched into that closet, a reminder of the resilience that thrives in the face of unspeakable terror. Story 12. The hotel stood there, a relic of forgotten times, where weary travelers sought refuge for just a night. The clerk's eyes held a glint of warning as he passed her the key, his voice barely a whisper. Avoid the last door on the left. Intrigue tugged at her, urging her to unravel the mystery. That evening, in the hushed corridor bathed in dim light, she hesitated before that very door. The brass handle chilled her fingertips as she leaned in, straining to hear. A breath, faint yet unmistakable, brushed against her ear from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed emerged from the fog of sleep, slipping under the yellow tape marking the threshold of a grim tableau. The stench of coppery dread assaulted her senses as she crossed into the room. Blood had seeped into the floor, a macabre tapestry staining the once faded carpet. Amidst the chaos, a young woman lay motionless, her fair locks splayed around her like a tragic crown. Her vacant gaze pierced the air, frozen in a silent scream. Reed knelt beside the fallen figure, mindful not to disturb the scene meticulously marked by evidence tags. The forensic specialist, his tone detached, noted the grim pattern echoing past tragedies. "The third one this season," he murmured, capturing the scene through his lens. Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement. The victim's attire clashed with the motel's dreary setting, an enigma and luxury amidst decay. A designer bag lay open, untouched, dispelling notions of theft. This was a different kind of darkness at play. The hotel manager lingered in the shadows, his pallor betraying his unease. "She arrived alone, paid in cash. I never imagined," his voice faltered, grief etched in his features. "The maid discovered her during routine cleaning." Reed scanned the room anew, searching for clues. No signs of forced entry, no struggle evident on the victim. She had welcomed her demise or recognized her assailant. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned images on the board, connecting the dots of a sinister puzzle. 3 faces, eerily similar, found in obscure motels, a chilling, recurring motif. Whispers of a predator on the prowl reverberated through the city. "Autopsies in," Detective Hayes announced, dropping a file on Reed's desk. "Manual strangulation, no DNA traces, no signs of assault." Reed's brow furrowed. This was not mere predation. It bore the mark of something personal, intimate. Days merged into nights as the investigation delved deeper. Surveillance footage yielded no breakthroughs. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, defied easy categorization. A financial analyst with a meticulous nature, she seemed out of place in this grim setting. A breakthrough dawned during Reed's conversation with Werner's sister. Trembling hands clutched a cup of coffee as revelations spilled forth. She spoke of a man from work, mysterious, married, she called him. The focus shifted to Werner's workplace, where colleagues painted a picture of a discreet professional. A business card tucked away led Reed to Charles Emerson, a senior vice president whose demeanor exuded charm and deceit in equal measure. Alibis crumbled under scrutiny, truths veiled in half-truths. Emerson's eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt at Reed's probing questions. Forensics uncovered damning evidence, a sinister dance of fingerprints, fibers, and DNA linking Emerson to the web of deceit. The veneer of respectability shattered as confessions spilled forth. "We were entangled, but she threatened to expose us," Emerson confessed, defiance in his tone. Hotel records painted a damning portrait of his deception. a trail of breadcrumbs leading to his monstrous acts. The trial unfolded swiftly, a spectacle of justice meted out in a sterile courtroom. Families found solace in the verdict, while Emerson's mask of indifference remained intact. Life without parole became his fate, a hollow victory in the eyes of those he had wronged. Reed's gaze locked with his, a fleeting glimpse into the abyss within him, a darkness that defied comprehension. Dubbed The Door on the Left Saga, the case captivated minds and chilled hearts. Psychologists dissected Emerson's psyche, while armchair detectives scrutinized every detail. For Reed, the closure felt elusive, a lingering shadow in the corridors of her mind. Hotel keys, relics of a bygone nightmare, lay dormant in the evidence vault, a stark reminder that some doors, once opened, reveal horrors that can never be erased. Story 13. In the beginning, there was only a flicker, a disturbance in the baby monitor's transmission. The mother brushed it off as mere interference, but then the audio crackled and a hushed voice murmured, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine. With her heart racing, she hurried to her son's room, only to find the crib empty. The closed window, the locked door, everything seemed undisturbed except for the stuffed rabbit on the floor, its eerie black eyes fixed on her. Rebecca's scream pierced the silence, raw and relentless, echoing through the walls. The neighbors, stirred by her anguish, dialed emergency services. When the authorities arrived, they discovered her cradling the stuffed rabbit, swaying on the nursery floor. Samuel, her 4-month-old infant, had vanished without a trace. The investigation that followed yielded few clues. There were no signs of forced entry, and the security system had remained intact. The baby monitor footage showed nothing unusual until that fateful whisper and static. How could someone enter a locked home, take a child, and leave without a trace except for a disturbed toy? Suspicion fell on Rebecca. Her husband, Daniel, had been away on business, and their strained marriage added fuel to the speculation. Rebecca's medical history revealed struggles with postpartum depression. During questioning, her composure struck the detectives as unsettlingly composed for a mother in such distress. Whispers circulated within the community, casting shadows of doubt. Then a breakthrough emerged. Microscopic fibers on the nursery windowsill, foreign to the household, hinted at an intruder accessing the room from outside with a specialized rope. Security footage from neighboring homes revealed a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows that night. A distinctive footprint in the garden soil pointed to a skilled climber or military personnel. Rebecca's innocence began to surface as the focus shifted to Daniel, returning from his trip with perplexing calluses from rock climbing, a newfound hobby. Financial records unveiled a troubling reality, a hefty life insurance policy on Samuel unknown to Rebecca. Suspicious calls and a hidden second family painted a grim picture. The unraveling of the case centered on the hacked baby monitor. Remote manipulation of the device led investigators to a basement where Samuel was found in the care of Elaine, Daniel's first wife. Elaine, haunted by a past loss, orchestrated the abduction to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. Digital evidence implicated Daniel, exposing their twisted plan. The trial echoed with the haunting audio from the baby monitor, revealing Daniel's presence during the abduction he denied. The verdict was swift: maximum sentences for kidnapping and conspiracy. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new life, far from the shadows of the past. The case reshaped abduction investigations, prompting a review of baby monitor security nationwide. Samuel, shielded from the truth of his disappearance, grew up unaware of the darkness that once enveloped his family. Rebecca preserved the stuffed rabbit in a hidden box, unable to part with it, haunted by those glassy eyes that bore witness to the chilling reality the monitor had captured. The truth, though unexpected, emerged from the whispers in the night, a reminder of the sinister ways technology can be wielded against the innocent. Story 14. The town kept silent about the house at the edge of the woods, a solitary structure with blackened windows and a porch weighed down by time. No one laid claim to it, and its origins remained a mystery lost to the whispers of the wind. But when a group of hikers strayed too close, they stumbled upon a peculiar site names etched into the wooden siding, carved deep like omens. And at the very bottom, fresh and untouched, was a name that stirred unease among them. "That's mine," one of them murmured, a tremor in their voice. In the dead of night, a call came through to dispatch, a routine report of trespassing. Mason Wright, the lead hiker who discovered his own name carved into the deserted house, was on the line. The responding officers anticipated nothing more than a case of juvenile mischief, a prank gone awry, but what awaited them defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as darkness draped the forest in shadows. Her flashlight cut through the obscurity, revealing the weathered exterior of the house. The names 27 in total ran vertically down the eastern wall, some nearly fading into oblivion with age, while others remained crisp as if freshly carved. And at the end, Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason asserted, his breath crystallizing in the frigid air. "I can't fathom how my name came to be known." Thus commenced the investigation, with each name on the wall subjected to scrutiny. The findings sent a chill through the detective team. Every name corresponded to a missing person from the past 4 decades, individuals who had vanished while hiking alone. Some cases had grown cold, while others remained open, all sharing a harrowing commonality: they had disappeared without a trace in these very woods. Forensic analysts meticulously documented each carving, noting the varying depths, techniques, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harked back to a missing persons report from 37 years prior, a young woman who ventured into the woods and never returned, leaving behind only a solitary hiking boot by a stream. Mason's account remained steadfast under scrutiny. He professed no ties to the area beyond this ill-fated hiking expedition with his college friends. Their trail had been chosen at random, guided by an online suggestion. There seemed to be no link between Mason and the other names adorning the ominous wall. Attention then turned to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, provided snapshots from their hike. Upon closer inspection, analysts discerned a disconcerting presence, a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 photos, a tall, gaunt silhouette partially obscured by trees. "We saw no one else on the trail," Emily insisted. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a search of the house's interior. While the structure appeared deserted, a grim discovery awaited in the basement. Personal effects of the missing hikers were meticulously arranged on wooden shelves: watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a name matching those on the exterior wall. Bloodstains, faint yet visible under ultraviolet light, marred the concrete floor, remnants of efforts to scrub clean. Despite the cadaver dog's alerts near the thick woodland at the rear of the property, no bodies were unearthed beneath the house. As the probe delved deeper, Detective Keller observed a shift in Mason's behavior. He reported peculiar incidents, whispers outside his apartment, mysterious footprints leading to his door but not away, shadowy figures lingering on the street. Though an officer was assigned to safeguard him, Mason's paranoia escalated. A breakthrough came when buried land records were unearthed from county archives, revealing the house's previous owner as Victor Blackwood, a reclusive hunter. Sparse encounters with Blackwood painted a picture of an unnaturally tall, lean man who shunned interaction and vanished without a trace 15 years prior, his disappearance left uninvestigated. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller led a search deeper into the encompassing forest. There, a network of rudimentary hunting blinds was uncovered, strategically positioned along frequented hiking trails. Within one blind lay a journal chronicling meticulous observations, details of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The entries took a sinister turn, evolving from hunting animals to hunting humans, with elaborate accounts of how Victor Blackwood selected his prey. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions, deploying helicopters with thermal imaging and tactical teams scouring every nook and cranny. Yet the elusive suspect remained elusive. Mason abruptly vanished, his apartment deserted save for a chilling message freshly carved on his bedroom wall. The hunter becomes the hunted. Efforts to locate Mason proved futile, until a startling revelation emerged during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's house. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement lay a workshop equipped with woodworking tools, wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a name that struck a chord with Detective Keller, belonging to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house initially, absent due to illness. Authorities set up an unyielding surveillance perimeter around the house, monitoring every approach with cameras and motion sensors. The stage was set. 3 nights later, sensors blared an alert. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, unnaturally tall and slender, moving with an eerie grace. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly faltered, only to regain focus and find the figure vanished without a trace. To this day, the house remains under constant vigil. Mason and the forensic technician were never located, their fates a mystery. The investigation persists, with new resources allocated as similar vanishings plague wooded regions. The names on the wall have become a macabre legend among law enforcement. Some officers dare not speak them aloud, while others steer clear of the case entirely. Local hikers now skirt around the house, fearful that acknowledging its existence may consign their names to that dreadful roster, names unspoken. Story 15. She had always avoided venturing into the attic, finding it unsettling and eerie. But when a storm caused a leak in the roof, she had no choice but to climb the creaky stairs to investigate. The attic greeted her with a musty smell, filled with forgotten relics shrouded in layers of dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the shadows of the far corner, an old dollhouse caught her eye. Its intricate details were hauntingly beautiful, the tiny furniture arranged with meticulous care. However, as she peered closer, a sense of unease crept over her. The figures inside were not dolls, but miniature replicas, finely carved to resemble her family. Each tiny figure was placed exactly where their real-life counterparts had been sitting downstairs, mirroring their every movement. Except for one. The figure meant to represent her was not seated, but standing by the attic door, frozen in a position of eerie observation. Rebecca Morgan tentatively reached out and traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the indentation where the small wooden figure stood. A chill ran down her spine, unrelated to the cold draft that whispered through the rafters. The dollhouse's presence was inexplicable. This was not her childhood home. It was a temporary rental the family had only recently moved into. Disturbed and bewildered, Rebecca made a frantic call to law enforcement, setting off a chain of events that would unravel a twisted tale of obsession and intrusion. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off the family's distress as a misunderstanding or a cruel prank, but the intricate craftsmanship of the miniature figures gave her pause. Each tiny detail captured the essence of the family members: the father's thinning hair, the son's favorite hoodie, even the mother's small birthmark. Forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to no one in the family. Even more disturbing were the microscopic cameras hidden in the eyes of each miniature figure, all feeding into a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse. The footage showed that the intruder had been meticulously observing the Morgan family, learning their routines and habits with unsettling precision. As the investigation unfolded, a hidden entrance to a basement was discovered behind a false pantry wall. Inside, evidence pointed to someone living beneath the family for weeks before their arrival. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted at a secret presence that had gone undetected. The mystery deepened when property records revealed that the house had been vacant for a year before the Morgans moved in. Interviews with neighbors provided little insight, except for the occasional sighting of lights in the empty house, dismissed as routine real estate showings. A breakthrough came with digital forensics, tracing the surveillance data to an apartment across town. The walls of the apartment were plastered with photographs of the Morgan family and other previous tenants. Journal entries meticulously detailed the daily lives of each family member, showcasing a disturbing level of obsession. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the elderly couple who had owned the house. Financial struggles and a refusal to part with his childhood home had driven him to extreme measures. The dollhouse collection was his twisted way of asserting control over the property and its inhabitants, turning them into mere pawns in his elaborate game of surveillance. During interrogation, Wells remained disturbingly calm, stating that he needed to ensure the occupants treated his childhood home with respect. His delusional belief that he was entitled to monitor and manipulate their lives sent shivers down the spines of all involved. In the end, Wells was charged with a litany of offenses, shedding light on the need for stricter real estate disclosure laws and tenant protections. The judge acknowledged the profound violation of privacy the Morgan family had endured, condemning Wells for his heinous actions. The case left a lasting impact on Rebecca and her family, prompting them to seek solace in a new home far away. Yet the memories of being watched and manipulated lingered, casting a shadow of unease over their daily lives. As Rebecca reflected on the ordeal, she couldn't shake the haunting thought that somewhere, someone might still be orchestrating a twisted miniature version of their lives in a dollhouse yet to be discovered. Story 16. The old Polaroid held decades within its faded hues, a relic of forgotten birthdays and smiling faces. Candles flickered innocently, casting playful shadows across the scene frozen in time. Yet within the box of old memories passed down to the daughter, a chilling discovery awaited. Amongst the familiar faces of family members stood a mysterious figure, a man lurking in the background, just beyond the glow of the celebratory candles. Sarah Winters stumbled upon this unsettling collection while sifting through her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories revealed a series of snapshots capturing moments of joy from her childhood. What should have been a comforting journey down memory lane turned into the unraveling of a haunting mystery. In the first photograph, he was a mere whisper of darkness at the edge of her 7th birthday party, his presence barely registering. By the next photo, he had ventured inside, a shadowy figure blending into the background, and with each subsequent image, he crept closer, his obscured face a silent specter haunting the edges of the frames. Trembling, Sarah reached out to her father, seeking answers to the enigmatic figure that seemed to defy all memory. His initial denial gave way to a sharp intake of breath as he too gazed upon the eerie presence lurking in the photographs. A sense of unease settled between them, a shared realization of the inexplicable. Detective Marcus Reed, a seasoned investigator with a penchant for the unusual, took on Sarah's case with a quiet determination. As the rain tapped against the windows of the precinct, casting dancing shadows over the scattered photos, the detective methodically examined each image. His weathered hands traced the progression of the mysterious figure, his expression unreadable yet intrigued. Amidst the shifting shadows and whispers of the past captured in the photographs, a pattern emerged. The figure, once dismissed as a trick of the light, now revealed a deliberate movement through the scenes, inching closer to the unsuspecting children with each click of the camera. His presence, unnoticed by those in the photographs, cast a chilling shadow over the innocence of the captured moments. The investigation took a chilling turn as Sarah unearthed more photographs from other family albums, each unveiling the same haunting presence in the background. With the help of a skilled computer specialist, hidden details emerged from the aged images, offering glimpses of a past long obscured by time. A breakthrough came in the form of dental records, linking the shadowy figure to a long-forgotten maintenance worker named Robert Keller. Disappeared after being questioned in connection to past child abductions, Keller's presence in the photographs hinted at a sinister truth buried within the frozen frames. As the investigation delved deeper, connecting the dots between unsolved cases and the shadowy figure in the photographs, a grim reality emerged. Keller had left behind a trail of hidden horrors, his presence in the family gatherings a sinister prelude to the tragedies that befell the missing children. Sarah sat alone in her apartment, the weight of revelations heavy upon her shoulders. The news of identified remains near the vacation property sent a shiver down her spine, confirming the darkest suspicions. The shadow in the photographs, once a silent observer, now stood exposed as a malevolent force that had haunted her family's memories for decades. In the quiet of her apartment, surrounded by the chilling evidence of past horrors, Sarah came to terms with the invisible threat that had lingered unseen in the snapshots of joy. The photographs, once cherished mementos, now served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary moments. As she placed the photos back in the box, a sense of closure mingled with a lingering unease. The shadowy figure, captured in frozen time, had finally been unmasked, his presence acknowledged after years of clandestine existence. And though justice had shed light on the hidden truth, the scars of the past lingered in the haunting images that bore witness to a darkness that had long evaded detection. Story 17. The wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, a subtle movement that beckoned her curiosity. Kneeling down, she traced the edges of the loosened board, sensing a hidden secret waiting to be unveiled. With gentle precision, she lifted the boards, revealing a shadowy, confined space beneath the foundation of her new home. In the dim light, she initially saw only dust and cobwebs, but as her eyes adjusted to the darkness, shapes began to emerge: a mattress, a chair, and tucked away in a corner, a weathered notebook filled with the repetition of a single name, her own. Detective Morgan Reed stood quietly behind Sarah Coleman, observing the unease in her gaze as she peered into the abyss beneath the floorboards. It was more than just a hidden room that Sarah had stumbled upon. It was a violation of her sanctuary, an intrusion of something malevolent into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Please refrain from touching anything further." Detective Reed's voice was steady, a beacon of reassurance in the unsettling discovery. Clicking on her flashlight, she illuminated the secrets lurking in the concealed space. The walls bore witness to a collection of surveillance photos, snapshots of Sarah's everyday life, captured without her knowledge. A shrine of obsession meticulously crafted beneath her very feet. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly recluse named Walter Green, a man who had left behind no known kin. The property had sat vacant for months, its history shrouded in silence. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and minor renovations, with no hint of the sinister secrets hidden within. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice was a whisper. "The neighbors claimed he was a recluse. I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report stated." As crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment clattering against the wooden floors, the meticulous process of documentation began. The mattress, the chair, the notebook, all extracted from the clandestine chamber for further analysis. Forensic experts uncovered a myriad of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green, scattered throughout the hidden room. What troubled the investigators most was the timeline they constructed. Through utility records and dated photographs, it became evident that Walter had been observing Sarah for years before his demise. He had woven himself into her world, a silent shadow trailing her every move, unknown and unseen. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist explained during a briefing. From fantasy to reality, from admiration to possession. The hidden chamber suggests a meticulous preparation for something more sinister. Detective Reed's inquiry took a surprising turn when she spoke with Walter's former coworker from the local shopping center maintenance department. A man plagued by unease, fiddling with his wedding ring as he revealed fragments of Walter's hidden fixation. Walter spoke of her occasionally, the man confessed. He believed she resembled someone from his past. "I thought it was harmless infatuation. I never imagined," his voice trailed off, haunted by the implications of his words. Obtaining a warrant to search Walter's untouched workplace locker, Detective Reed uncovered a key with no apparent purpose in his home. Tracing its origin to a storage unit registered under Walter's name, they were met with a chilling sight. Inside lay replicas of Sarah's former life, an eerie mirror image of her apartment, meticulously recreated down to the smallest detail. A mannequin adorned with a wig mirroring Sarah's own hair sat at a replica desk. A calendar marked a date just a week after Walter's passing, circled in red with a single word scrawled across it: together. The investigation unearthed Walter's troubled past, marked by institutionalization for an obsession with a teacher and a diagnosis of erotomania, a distorted belief in a reciprocated love that defied reality. Decades of stability shattered by a chance encounter with Sarah, reigniting the flames of his delusions. Spread across the conference table were crime scene photographs, a silent testament to the depths of Walter's fixation. In his mind, they shared a connection, a destiny to be united, Detective Reed explained, her voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. Could there have been an encounter that triggered this fixation? A fellow detective inquired. Reed shook her head somberly. Sometimes these obsessions require only a spark, a fleeting glance, a passing interaction. For someone like Walter, that was all it took. Unable to shake the shadows of the past, Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, severing ties with the haunting memories that lingered within its walls. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the empty living room, enveloped in a silent contemplation. What if he hadn't passed away when he did? Her voice was a whisper carried by the weight of what-ifs. How long would I have resided here, unaware of his watchful eyes, unaware of the darkness concealed beneath my very feet? The case was officially closed following Walter's demise, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, though the abduction itself never transpired. The psychological evaluation painted a portrait of a man consumed by delusion, a tragedy averted by mere chance. Sarah relocated, reshaping her life in a new environment, guarded against the shadows of the past. Detective Reed checked in on her discreetly, a silent vigil of protection against a threat that had come too close to realization. The cottage found new owners, a young couple unaware of its hidden history. The secrets buried beneath the floorboards were sealed away, the echoes of the past fading into obscurity. Life moved forward, but for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor remained a cautionary whisper, a reminder of the unseen perils that lurk, of monsters who fade into the night, and of the fragile line between safety and peril. Story 18. In the quiet hum of renovations, secrets stir. The past veiled in dust and shadows, whispers of forgotten whispers. Sarah and Michael, drawn by the allure of a Victorian-era home, found more than ornate moldings and rich history buried beneath the floorboards. A letter, fragile with age, bore a cryptic warning: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before the echo of those words could fade, 3 sharp raps punctuated the stillness, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, with weathered hands and a keen eye, delved into the mystery. The house, once belonging to the enigmatic Hargrove family, held untold secrets in its time-worn walls. The note, a relic of the past, hinted at a dark tale of debts unpaid and shadows lurking. As Reed unraveled the threads of the past, she uncovered a story of fear and betrayal. Franklin Hargrove, a man haunted by unseen eyes, had harbored a debt to a shadowy figure known only as the Collector. 3 knocks, a sinister omen of impending doom, had marked the Collector's visits a debt to be paid in blood. Margaret Hargrove, a woman of quiet strength and hidden fears, had borne witness to her husband's descent into madness. The house, once a sanctuary, had become a prison of secrets and lies. Reed's investigation unearthed the truth buried beneath the floorboards: a skeleton, a silent witness to a crime long forgotten. Victor Mercer, the Collector, had met a grim fate at the hands of Franklin's desperation. The truth, long obscured by layers of deceit, emerged from the darkness. Margaret, a reluctant accomplice in a crime of passion, had kept her silence, haunted by the specter of 3 ominous knocks. The house, now tainted by the weight of its history, stood empty and abandoned. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of its past, fled into the night, leaving behind echoes of whispered secrets and unanswered questions. The note, a chilling reminder of the darkness that dwells within, remained a silent witness to the sins of the past. As night descended upon the old Victorian home, whispers of the past lingered in the air. 3 distinct knocks, a haunting refrain of lost souls seeking redemption, echoed through the empty halls. Whether it was the settling of old wood or the restless spirits of the past, the truth remained veiled in shadows. Detective Reed, in her final report, mused on the nature of mysteries left unsolved. Some secrets, she knew, were destined to remain buried in the depths of time, their whispers echoing through the corridors of history. And so, the old Victorian home stood as a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets with a watchful eye, a testament to the darkness that lurks within us all. Story 19. In the quiet stillness of an abandoned house, a mysterious phone call echoed through the dusty rooms. It wasn't your usual call, it was a pocket dial filled with static and muffled whispers. The operator almost dismissed it as a glitch until a voice broke through the chaos. A woman's voice, urgent and trembling, whispered, "He's here." And then silence enveloped the line like a shroud. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to the eerie message, playing it over and over again on the phone found in the deserted kitchen. The house had once belonged to the Sullivans, a family haunted by tragedy. The West Wing had been consumed by fire, forcing them to flee, leaving the house to gather dust and memories. As Morgan delved deeper into the case, she discovered that the call originated from a phone registered to Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had tragically perished in a car accident 3 years prior. The pieces of the puzzle seemed impossible to fit together: a deceased woman's phone making calls from a house frozen in time. The forensic team found no fingerprints, no footprints, no signs of life in the abandoned dwelling. It was as if the call had materialized out of thin air, a ghostly echo from the past. The voice on the recording matched Catherine's with uncanny accuracy, speaking from the moment of her untimely death. Interviews with Catherine's loved ones revealed a chilling truth hidden in her journal: a tale of love turned sinister, of fear and desperation at the hands of someone she once trusted. Mark Jennings, her boyfriend at the time of her demise, had an alibi, but suspicion lingered like a shadow. A breakthrough came when Catherine's mother uncovered her daughter's buried phone, revealing a haunting exchange of texts on the night of her death, a trail of fear and betrayal, leading to the truth behind the accident that claimed her life. Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, his dark obsession with Catherine laid bare in his twisted shrine of memories. The ghost call was his sick game, a manipulation of sound to torment those seeking justice for the silenced voice of his victim. As the case unraveled, more dark secrets emerged: other young women, other tragedies linked to Mark's dark past. But justice, swift and unyielding, finally caught up with him. The phone from the abandoned house now rests in the evidence locker, a silent witness to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Catherine's story, a tale of love, betrayal, and ultimate justice, lingers in the whispers of the wind, a reminder that even in death, a victim's voice can find a way to be heard. The phone may no longer ring, but its echoes resonate through the halls of time, a testament to the resilience of those who refuse to be silenced. Story 20. In the heart of the city, there stood a quaint coffee shop that held more mysteries than the swirling steam of fresh brew. For years, a solitary figure had made this cozy place his sanctuary, a man shrouded in anonymity, known only by the routine he followed. Each day, he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee with no sugar, and cocoon himself in a cloak of silence. The barista recognized his face, a familiar presence amidst the bustling cafe, yet his name remained a whispered enigma to all. Then one day, the man failed to grace the shop with his usual presence. Concern rippled through the staff, and the police were summoned to investigate the sudden absence. When they reached his accustomed seat, a solitary wallet lay abandoned, a solitary sentinel of his enigmatic existence. Within its confines, a driver's license bore a photo of the man, but where a name should have resided, there lingered only a void of emptiness, a chilling absence that echoed the mystery that had enveloped him. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the enigma, her fingers tracing the cold metal table as she pored over the perplexing security footage. The man, now a mere shadow dubbed John Doe in the annals of the case, appeared unremarkable on screen, his features blending seamlessly into the tapestry of the coffee shop's daily routine. With a sense of unease gnawing at her, Mercer replayed the footage, each frame unraveling the unsettling disappearance of the enigmatic figure. John entered, he sat, he wrote in a weathered notebook, and then, in a breath-stealing moment, he vanished into the ether, leaving behind only questions and a void of perplexity. As the investigation unfolded, a peculiar revelation emerged. The man had never traversed the path to the restroom, nor had he exited through any known portal. It was as though he had slipped through the veils of reality, leaving behind nothing but a haunting enigma. The wallet, a vessel of secrets, divulged no answers, only cryptic clues that led Mercer down a labyrinthine path of intrigue. A lone business card, bearing a ghostly phone number, whispered of connections beyond the tangible realm, a portal to the unknown. The barista's recollections painted a portrait of a solitary figure, a silent observer who dwelled in the realm of solitude, penning inscrutable codes and sketches that defied conventional understanding. The notebook, a repository of enigmatic musings, hinted at a mind untethered from the constraints of reality. As Mercer delved deeper, anomalies began to surface: the flickering time stamp, the arcane mirror that hung sentinel between realms, and the eerie reflections that danced beyond the boundaries of reason. Each clue unraveled a tapestry of intrigue that defied the laws of the known world. A chance encounter with an elderly physicist unveiled a truth that transcended the boundaries of comprehension. The man known as John Doe was, in fact, Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the annals of experimental quantum theory. His disappearance, a testament to the enigmatic nature of reality's tapestry. The coffee shop, a nexus of convergence, stood upon the hallowed grounds of a forgotten laboratory, a place where the boundaries between worlds blurred and realities bled into one another. Weston's experiments had pierced the veil of existence, leading him down a path of no return. As Mercer pieced together the fragments of this enigmatic puzzle, she glimpsed the truth that lay veiled behind the shattered mirror of perception. Two versions of the same man, existing in parallel realms, bound by the threads of fate and the whims of an experiment that defied the laws of nature. In the end, as the shop closed its doors and the echoes of a bygone mystery faded into whispers on the wind, Mercer found herself ensnared in the enigmatic web that Weston had woven. A fragment of the mirror adorned her wall, a silent witness to the truths that lurked beyond the confines of reality, a testament to the man who slipped through the cracks of existence, leaving behind only whispers of a mystery that defied explanation. Story 21. Once upon a time, a woman felt the urge to repaint the nursery, the place where her baby would soon rest. The walls wore a faded blue hue, a color that whispered of bygone tales hidden within its layers. As she brushed on the first coat of white, a secret beneath the surface began to emerge. Letters, faint at first, gradually sharpened into focus, forming a message scrawled beneath the fresh paint. Don't let it hear you. Her breath hitched in her throat as she took a step back, her eyes widening at the sight before her. Tiny handprints, too high for any child to reach, marred the pristine white paint. This discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home not long ago at a remarkably low price, oblivious to the dark history that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the door, her notebook at the ready. A pregnant woman greeted her, her belly swollen beneath paint-splattered overalls, weariness etched into the shadows beneath her eyes. Trembling hands accompanied her tale of finding the cryptic message and the eerie handprints. The woman revealed that the previous owners had vanished abruptly, leaving under the cloak of night with only essentials packed in their car, according to the neighbors. Detective Klein explored the historic home, the aged floorboards creaking beneath her feet. In the nursery, the unfinished wall bore the remnants of the unsettling message and the ghostly handprints left behind. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's history. The house had changed owners 8 times in 3 decades, a suspiciously high turnover rate. More unsettling were the child welfare reports linked to 3 of those families, recounting tales of whispers from the walls and unseen eyes watching the children as they slumbered. Further investigation unveiled the house's past connection to Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who had operated an orphanage within its walls long ago. 5 children from her care had vanished without a trace, their fate shrouded in mystery. The detective unearthed a sealed room behind the nursery wall, filled with the belongings of the missing children, but devoid of their remains. Interviews with former residents painted a chilling picture of inexplicable phenomena: rearranged toys, ghostly laughter, and mysterious drawings appearing overnight. Each family recounted a similar warning etched into the nursery wall, a message echoing through time: "Don't let them find you." The detective enlisted the aid of ground-penetrating radar, leading to a grim discovery beneath the basement floor: 5 child-sized shapes, each marking a tragic end. The children's remains were found bearing pendants engraved with their names, the orphans who had supposedly run away but met a darker fate. Luminol revealed a haunting sight in the nursery: countless handprints glowing in the darkness, a silent testament to the forgotten souls trapped within the walls. Eleanor's journals unveiled her macabre intentions, seeking to harness the children's essence to prolong her own life. With the victims finally laid to rest, the house fell into silence, shunned by the pregnant couple who refused to set foot inside again. Detective Klein concluded her report, documenting the eerie handprints and the cryptic message, acknowledging that justice had been served, but a lingering presence remained, a spectral echo reaching through time. The nursery walls crumbled, workers recoiling at whispers echoing from the ruins, a spectral reminder of the house's tainted history. Eventually condemned, the house became a cold case, a physical closure masking unanswered spiritual queries. The detective preserved a photograph, a haunting image of 5 luminous handprints, a poignant reminder that some secrets transcend paint and time. Story 22. The mysterious package arrived at her doorstep, shrouded in secrecy. No return label, no tracking number, just a weathered cardboard box hinting at a hidden story. Sarah Miller hesitated, knowing she should have ignored it, but curiosity whispered in her ear. With trembling hands, she peeled back the tape, revealing not the expected contents, but a single VHS tape and a cryptic note that simply read, "Watch alone." The weight of the tape felt ominous in her grasp, as if carrying the burden of untold secrets. Sarah traced the edges, feeling the rough texture of the plastic casing beneath her fingertips. The handwritten note bore the marks of urgency, each stroke etched with a sense of urgency that sent shivers down her spine. Surrounded by the familiar sounds of her suburban neighborhood, Sarah hesitated before bringing the package inside. The name on the box, Daniel Whitaker, meant nothing to her, a stranger in a sea of familiar faces. Against her better judgment, she inserted the tape into her old VCR, the static giving way to a dimly lit room and the haunting voice of a man named Daniel Whitaker. In a desperate plea for the truth, Whitaker's words painted a picture of innocence amidst a web of deceit. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in a case that defied logic, where the lines between guilt and innocence blurred with each passing tape. As Sarah received a second package containing damning evidence of a pharmaceutical conspiracy, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Whitaker's breadcrumb trail led to a storage unit, revealing the dark underbelly of corporate greed and manipulation. Justice, elusive yet relentless, found its way through the perseverance of those who dared to question the narrative presented to them. In a quiet moment of reflection, Sarah and Whitaker stood face to face, the weight of their shared experience hanging between them. As the tapes were logged into evidence, a reminder lingered in the air that sometimes the truth arrives in unexpected packages, waiting for the curious souls brave enough to unravel its mysteries. Story 23. She cleared the steam from the mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her features, her attire unchanged. Yet a lingering sense of unease crept over her as she gazed longer. A flicker caught in her peripheral vision, a subtle movement not her own. When she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. This unsettling incident marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's enigmatic journey. What unfolded would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided in a modest apartment within a serene suburban enclave, living a solitary existence. Known to her acquaintances as meticulous and reserved, she maintained a polite distance while remaining amicable with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized firm dictated a life governed by routine and exactitude. No hint in her demeanor hinted at her future role as the focal point of a complex criminal inquiry. The peculiarities commenced innocuously. Objects within Rebecca's abode appeared subtly rearranged, no items missing, just subtly shifted. A mug placed on a different shelf, books reordered, her toothbrush out of place. She brushed off these occurrences as mere lapses of memory, attributing them to long hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights, straining her vision. Detective Marion Shaw received the initial complaint when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally sought assistance from the authorities. Initially deemed non-criminal, Shaw perceived it as a matter better suited for mental health services than law enforcement. The absence of tangible evidence, no signs of forced entry, missing possessions, or broken locks led Shaw to file the report among the roster of non-urgent cases. There was nothing concrete, Shaw later attested. No evidence of intrusion, just a woman plagued by a sense of disquiet within her home. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca recounted in vivid detail the disconcerting experience of her reflection seemingly moving independently, the sensation of being watched even in solitude. This time she presented tangible proof, a self-installed security camera aimed at her front door. The footage unveiled a chilling revelation that sent shivers through even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed by an identical figure entering her dwelling 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic analysts scrutinized the recording for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, finding none. The individual mimicking Rebecca replicated her movements, attire, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. However, time-stamped footage from her workplace security system verified Rebecca's presence at her office building across town at the same time. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with unsettling accuracy." The investigation escalated as fingerprints throughout the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, devoid of foreign DNA traces. Neighbors reported routine sightings of Rebecca, Nothing out of the ordinary, just her usual comings and goings. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, recounted a peculiar encounter where she greeted Rebecca upon her return home one evening, receiving no response, a deviation from Rebecca's customary behavior that raised no immediate alarms. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal as the minor alterations in her residence multiplied. Vanishing food from her fridge, unauthorized searches on her computer, and unsettling selfies on her phone, photographs bearing her likeness, yet captured without her recollection. "I feel as though I'm losing my mind," Rebecca confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. Or perhaps someone is deliberately orchestrating this illusion. The breakthrough surfaced when a pattern emerged in the security footage. The doppelganger exclusively entered when Rebecca departed for specific pre-planned engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery trips, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "Someone possesses an intimate knowledge of your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This is no random act, but a targeted surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist speculated that they were confronting a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, perhaps aiming to supplant her entirely. Such instances, though rare, were chronicled in psychological studies, illustrating a perpetrator fixated on a victim, symbolizing traits they desired: stability, beauty, success, normality. The focus narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, dismissed due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily and Rebecca had collaborated closely, with Lily often remarking on their shared likenesses. Following her termination, Lily dispatched a series of disconcerting emails to Rebecca, one suggesting, "We could be one and the same. At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence, unveiling a chilling revelation that shifted the case from disturbing to harrowing. A room within Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with countless images capturing Rebecca's movements, shopping, socializing, all unbeknownst to her. The closet harbored duplicates of Rebecca's attire, alongside makeup brands matching her preferences and meticulous notes detailing her behaviors, speech patterns, and daily rituals. Most alarming were the practice videos showcasing Lily mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The evolution was palpable, initial attempts crude and conspicuous, later iterations nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aimed to become me," Rebecca whispered upon witnessing the evidence. "She wasn't merely imitating, but erasing me." Forensic experts unearthed sophisticated equipment for crafting key replicas and duplicating electronic access cards. Lily had devised an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar projecting her schedule in detail. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate intent. Journals discovered in her residence contained erratic entries fluctuating between first and third person, at times referring to Rebecca as both me and her within the same passage. The final entry sent a chill down the investigators' spines. "Soon, only one of us shall endure. The stronger version shall prevail." As authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished, leaving behind a residence in disarray, a telltale sign of a hasty escape. A nationwide alert was issued, and Rebecca was relocated to a secure facility under constant surveillance for her protection. For 3 weeks, authorities surveilled every location linked to Rebecca's past life, yet Lily remained elusive. The case took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave and under protection, Rebecca had been sighted entering the building. Surveillance footage corroborated the account. An individual mirroring Rebecca had utilized a valid ID card to access the premises, perusing her former workspace for 40 minutes before exiting. The disconcerting truth surfaced. Lily hadn't fled but made her move, now assuming Rebecca's identity as the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case persists as an open investigation, with Lily Winters at large. Rebecca Thorne chose not to return to her past life, forging a fresh identity at an undisclosed locale. Detective Shaw maintains a photograph on her desk portraying two strikingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. She scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the nuances that differentiate one from the other. The truly chilling aspect, Shaw imparts to new recruits, is not someone resembling you or mimicking you. It's the desire to be you to such an extent that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity isn't solely what we present to the world, but what we fiercely safeguard. Occasionally, we grasp its worth only when someone seeks to usurp it. Story 24. In the quiet of the night, a mysterious package arrived in the mail, wrapped in plainness, devoid of any return address. Within the envelope rested a single brass key, its surface weathered by the passage of time. The homeowner, a woman named Sarah, held the key in her hand, feeling an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. She tried the key in every lock she possessed, but none yielded to its touch. It did not belong to her. Placing the key on her coffee table, Sarah witnessed a strange occurrence. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, long silenced by the hands of time, let out a single hollow chime, a sound that echoed with a haunting familiarity. Puzzled by this inexplicable event, Sarah reported the strange incident to the authorities. What began as a mere curiosity soon unraveled into a chilling tale that would shake the foundations of the once serene suburban neighborhood. The responding officer, initially dismissive of Sarah's concerns, took the key as evidence, attributing the occurrence to a simple mistake. But Sarah's intuition whispered of something darker, something amiss. The key found its way to Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen sense for cases that transcended their innocuous beginnings. As the brass key sat on his desk, its unassuming appearance belied an aura of unease. Investigations revealed Sarah to be an ordinary woman with no blemish on her past. A retired teacher, a widow, a mother her life seemed to hold no secrets. Forensic examinations found no fingerprints on the key except Sarah's, and the envelope revealed no clues save for a generic postmark. A breakthrough came when Detective Harmon decided to delve deeper, running the key's unique pattern through the department database. A connection emerged, a cold case from years past, linked to a storage unit containing chilling evidence of unspeakable crimes against women. The key unlocked a sinister past, leading the investigation down a path of darkness and despair. The photographs recovered from the storage unit depicted faces of the missing, their fates unknown. Sarah, shown these images, recognized none of them, her anxiety mounting with each revelation. As the investigation unfolded, new locks and security systems were installed in Sarah's home, a fortress against the unknown terror that lurked in the shadows. The search for the perpetrator intensified, leading to a man named Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor with a hidden past. His trail was cold, his existence a ghostly enigma. The true horror of the case emerged when a secluded cabin held a macabre secret, a hidden room filled with brass keys, each bearing a name and a date, a sinister catalog of lives taken. The manhunt for Jenkins spread like wildfire, earning him the chilling moniker of the Keymaster. Fear gripped the community as the search expanded, the truth of his crimes casting a long shadow over the once peaceful neighborhood. In a final confrontation, Jenkins met his end, leaving behind a journal detailing his atrocities and a message for Sarah, a chilling reminder of his twisted obsession. The investigation uncovered 32 victims, their stories finally brought to light. Families found closure amidst the heartbreak, while Sarah could never return to the home tainted by the darkness that had brushed so close to her life. The grandfather clock's mysterious chime was revealed to be a sinister surveillance tool, a reminder that evil can wear a mask of normalcy. As the keys sat in silent testimony, unlocking a devastating truth, researchers delved into Jenkins' writings, seeking to understand the minds of hidden predators before they strike again. In the silence of the night, the keys whispered of lives lost, a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the most unremarkable façades. Story 25, The House of Hidden Eyes. The realtor's listing spoke nothing of a basement, and the blueprints held no mention of it. Yet as the family unraveled the old carpet, a door emerged, concealed beneath. With a heavy, rusted handle, it took 3 of them to pry it open. Stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, welcomed them as they descended the steps into darkness. Storage was expected, but what they found was a chair beneath a single swaying light bulb. On the wall behind, a row of photographs, all of them. Pictures captured from within their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban property during the winter, when darkness enveloped early and bare trees stood against the cold sky. The 2-story structure, with its weathered siding and creaking floors, exuded character and history, they had convinced themselves. Little did they know the depths of history within the house, and how violently it would intertwine with their present. Detective Sarah Connors, accompanied by her partner, arrived at the property. The crime scene unit had already secured the perimeter with fluttering yellow tape, prompted by Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice describing the hidden chamber beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else ventures down there," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with practiced ease. Camera flashes pierced the darkness of the stairwell as the forensic team captured the scene. The wooden steps groaned underfoot as they entered the small basement space, akin to a standard bedroom, with concrete walls painted in flat gray. A solitary chair stood bolted to the floor in the room's center, while above it the bare bulb cast harsh shadows that danced with an unseen breeze. However, it was the wall of 37 photographs that seized their attention, meticulously arranged in chronological order. "These date back almost 4 weeks," noted Connor's partner, scrutinizing the timestamps on the prints. The images portrayed the Mercers in various candid moments around their home, yet the investigation unveiled no signs of forced entry or theft. Privacy had been violated, leaving the family bereft of the sanctuary they once felt. Forensic analysis revealed multiple fingerprints, mostly belonging to past property owners. The house had changed hands numerous times, each family residing for a brief period before selling at reduced prices. None had ever mentioned a basement. As they delved deeper, inconsistencies in property records emerged: altered blueprints, withdrawn permits, redacted inspection reports. The breakthrough arrived during the contractor's interview, who had renovated the house 7 years earlier. His complexion paled at the sight of the basement photos. "That room isn't real," he insisted, hands trembling. "I gutted that place down to the bones. There was no basement, no door, only dirt and concrete beneath the living room." Data extracted from a hidden memory card unveiled hundreds more images, not only of the Mercers but of former families. Children asleep, parents arguing, mundane routines all captured by an unseen presence. Darker revelations surfaced with recovered audio files from a concealed weatherproof box in the basement, revealing conversations from various rooms within the house. "We must search every nook and cranny," Connors urged, her tone urgent. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years." Beyond the photograph wall, investigators stumbled upon a narrow passage leading to a monitoring station, a desk, a chair, a laptop linked to wireless cameras, and a journal filled with meticulous observations on each family. The journal's contents grew increasingly erratic, with phrases like, "They never looked down," and "They never see me" repeated. The final entry ominously stated, "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis confirmed the original builder, Edward Kelvin, never left the house. He had constructed hidden observation points to watch the families, whom he considered his own. A 3-day manhunt unveiled Kelvin curled in a crawlspace between the second-floor rooms, his body adapted to the narrow passages he had crafted within the walls. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as characters in his private theater, observing them with detached curiosity. He believed they had willingly become his tenants. The psychological evaluation diagnosed Kelvin with severe delusions, perceiving himself as the house's custodian rather than an intruder. The Mercer family never returned, joining the list of predecessors who abandoned their possessions, fleeing with only essentials. The trial exposed the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, revealing hidden rooms and observation points designed into the house's structure. Upon the jury's decision, Kelvin remained stoic, retreating into his mental labyrinth where he could still roam the house's passages. The property was razed, the families haunted not by what was taken, but by what had lurked unseen within their walls. In quiet moments, they questioned if they were ever truly alone in their own homes, pondering the boundaries between safety and intrusion. Story 26, Whispers in the Walls. The old apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered by time. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled in a familiar rhythm, creating a symphony of antiquity. The occupant, a woman of quiet demeanor, had grown accustomed to these sounds, dismissing them as mere echoes of the past. But one night, as she lay in bed, a subtle shift in the air caught her attention. A voice, soft and ethereal, drifted through the vents like a wisp of smoke. It was not a random noise or a distant conversation, it was a whisper, calling her name with a haunting familiarity. Curiosity mingled with unease as she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart quickening in her chest. A breath of icy air brushed past her cheek, carrying with it a message, almost playful in its tone. "I know you can hear me," the voice murmured, sending a shiver down her spine. Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed. The forensics team moved with precision around her, capturing every detail with their cameras as if documenting a forgotten tale. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence unnoticed until the scent of decay permeated the building. Officer Patel recited the details from his notepad, recounting Alina's claims of voices speaking through the vents, dismissed by the building management as mere quirks of an aging structure. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the deep gouges around its edges with a furrowed brow. "These marks were made by desperation, not tools," she whispered to herself, her mind piecing together a puzzle of fear and longing. The victim, Alina, had been a beloved figure, a kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, both in her students and her cherished houseplants. Her disappearance had left a void in the lives of those who knew her, a mystery that now unfolded before Shaw's eyes. Eleanor's sister had revealed during an emotional interview that her sibling had been plagued by paranoia in the days leading up to her vanishing act. She was convinced someone was watching her, speaking to her through the vents, the sister had confessed, her voice trembling with sorrow. Shaw scanned the apartment with newfound insight, noticing the subtle clues left behind a chair positioned beneath the vent, as if waiting for a clandestine conversation. The forensic report unveiled unsettling revelations, a connection between fibers found in the vent and Eleanor's clothing, a foreign fingerprint on the inside of the cover, and haunting audio recordings from Eleanor's phone that echoed in Shaw's ears like ghostly whispers. The building itself harbored a dark history, with a string of tenants fleeing in fear, tales of voices in the walls, and a superintendent named Harold Weber whose calm facade cracked under Shaw's scrutiny. The search for truth led to a hidden passage in Eleanor's bathroom, a gateway to a realm of shadows and whispers. Within the narrow maintenance passage, remnants of a clandestine presence emerged: a flashlight, a water bottle, food wrappers, a silent testament to a voyeur lurking in the shadows. Shaw's suspicions crystallized as she uncovered Weber's meticulously kept records, a digital shrine to his twisted obsessions. The arrest of Weber revealed the extent of his depravity, his eerie calmness in the face of justice sending chills down Shaw's spine. His words, laced with a chilling certainty, hinted at a connection beyond the physical realm, a bond forged in darkness and solitude. As the truth unfurled, a pattern emerged: a predator hiding within the walls, preying on unsuspecting souls, whispering promises of companionship until the whispers became their reality. The trial painted a portrait of a man consumed by his delusions, a puppet of the building's whispers. Weber's conviction brought a fleeting sense of closure, but the building remained a silent witness to his crimes, its walls echoing with the ghosts of the past. Residents came and went, each plagued by the same unsettling phenomena: whispers in the walls, cold drafts that carried faint voices from the depths. The old apartment building stood as a monument to a darkness that lingered, a reminder that some secrets are never truly silenced. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled in a haunting melody, a lament for those lost to the shadows of the past. And amidst the silence, the whispers persisted, a spectral chorus that whispered of forgotten sins and restless spirits. The mystery remained unsolved, a tale woven into the very fabric of the building, a story whispered in the walls. Story 27. In the depths of the attic, beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with eyes as blue as the sky, gazing out in a perpetual state of watchfulness. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who had recently acquired the Victorian house, initially dismissed the doll as just another relic of the past, a forgotten memento left behind by previous occupants. Little did they know that this encounter would mark the beginning of a series of inexplicable events that would shroud their lives in mystery. That evening, as they retired to bed, a subtle shift in the air hinted at an unseen presence. The stillness of the night seemed to linger, wrapping around them like a heavy cloak, and when morning dawned, the doll had vanished from its place in the attic, only to reappear at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel in the dim light of dawn. The house itself held secrets, whispers of a troubled history that had captured Sarah and Michael's imagination when they first laid eyes on its grandeur. The allure of the intricate woodwork and enigmatic charm masked the darker truths that lay hidden within its walls, truths that would soon entwine the couple in a web of the past. Detective Rachel Winters, a seasoned investigator, was called to the scene on a crisp autumn morning. The master bedroom revealed a haunting tableau: the female victim positioned unnaturally, limbs contorted at impossible angles, eyes wide with terror. In the hallway, the male victim lay as if in a desperate attempt to flee, his expression frozen in fear. As Detective Winters meticulously documented the scene, a sense of unease crept over her. The precision of the victim's postures, the absence of any struggle or forced entry, each detail spoke of a deliberate hand at play, orchestrating a macabre display reminiscent of a doll carefully posed on a shelf. The investigation unfolded like a tapestry of shadows, each thread leading deeper into the darkness that enveloped the house. Neighbors whispered of fleeting glimpses of figures moving behind curtains, of laughter echoing through empty rooms in the dead of night, casting a pall of dread over the once peaceful neighborhood. Forensic analysis yielded puzzling clues, traces of vintage fabrics found near the victims suggesting a link to the doll discovered by Sarah and Michael. But the most chilling revelation came from the history of the house itself, a legacy of unexplained death spanning generations, each shrouded in whispers of the supernatural. A newspaper clipping from decades past unveiled a tragic tale: the dollmaker who had once resided in the house, his creations imbued with a sinister allure born of grief and obsession. The final doll he crafted, a perfect replica of his deceased daughter, held a secret that transcended the bounds of the living world. As Detective Winters delved deeper into the mysteries that gripped the house, a pattern emerged: a connection between the victims and the attic, where Sarah and Michael had sought to reshape their future. Hidden photographs reveal the dollmaker's sinister legacy, the doll itself a harbinger of unseen forces at play. Infrared scans traced ghostly handprints etched in the walls, a silent testament to a presence that defied explanation. And as the investigation reached a standstill, a distant relative of the dollmaker whispered of arcane rituals and forbidden knowledge, hinting at a truth darker than any detective could fathom. The case remained unsolved, a specter haunting the halls of law enforcement, its tendrils reaching beyond the confines of reason. Detective Winters, her resolve tested by the enigma that eluded her grasp, made a fateful decision to retain the doll as evidence, unaware of the chilling fate that awaited her. In the stillness of the night, the dollmaker's legacy lived on, a phantom presence that defied the boundaries of time and space. And as the house passed into new hands, the attic stood empty, a silent witness to the mysteries that lingered within its walls, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to seek the truth.